why diversity is a business advantage, how more women can make it to the boardroom, and why entrepreneur Coco Brown is on a mission to empower equality. All right. Hey ho, let's go. Hello, my legendary friends. This is Christopher, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Legends and Losers. Man, am I glad you are here. Our guest today is an extraordinary entrepreneur on a mission to make a difference, and her name is Coco Brown, and I'll tell you a little bit more about her in a quick second. If you're new to Legends and Losers, you should know that Hal Elrod was kind enough to call us one of the best podcasts of all time. Silicon Valley Grand Dame of Public Relations, Sabrina Horn, says that we are the podcast Silicon Valley needs. And longtime friend and listener Brian Shaheen says this show is so off, it's on. Now, on Legends and Losers, we aspire to have authentic dialogues about what it really takes to design a legendary business and a legendary life. And, today we are going to have a conversation that I think a lot of people are having. And that conversation is about diversity. That conversation is about men and women in the workforce. That conversation is about women in business, women in tech, how we can get more women at senior levels in organizations. And yes, it's been in the news a lot lately, sexual harassment and men and women at the workplace. Now, I was lucky enough to meet Coco Brown at a Wildcat Ventures executive event in San Francisco back in September of 2017. And we have a mutual friend in Bruce Cleveland. And Bruce has been a guest on Legends and Losers. He's an unbelievable entrepreneur turned venture capitalist. And the folks at Wildcat put on this extraordinary ding dong event. Ding dong meaning a term of endearment for senior executives and upper management, as in senior ding dongs. We got to meet there. I actually saw Coco speak about the initiative of her organization. I was incredibly taken and incredibly impressed by the mission that Coco's on. This conversation we have, I think, is an important one. And it's authentic as it gets, because that's how Coco is. She's smart. She's incredibly insightful. And while this may be a challenging topic, some might say a difficult topic, some might say a hard topic for men and women to engage in, it's clearly an important one. And even though can be a tough topic, we have a very fun conversation about it. So let me tell you about the incredible Coco Brown. She is a multi-time entrepreneur and CEO. Today, she is the founder and chief executive of the Athena Alliance, which is an organization dedicated to advancing diversity in boardrooms. Athena has built a network of over 800 senior-level, C-level executive women, as well as venture capitalists and chief executives from over 100 companies, including Microsoft, Autodesk, Intuit, Accenture, Deloitte, and PwC, just to name a few. And their mission is really to bring together leading companies of various different sizes, public and private, with senior level, C-level executive women who are ready to serve and make a difference on their boards. And I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. I think both Coco and I took some risk in wading into some waters that, some people might deem challenging today, but really an important discussion. And like I said, a fun and engaging one. Coco's been on Huffington Post, TheStreet.com, Forbes, Fortune, Bloomberg, and many others. And now here she is, Coco Brown, on Legends and Losers. So where are you off to?
Travel. Well, I am off to this weekend. I head to Seattle. I'm there for a day and a bit, so the better part of 2 days or 3 days. And then I come back only for Halloween so that I can spend Halloween with the kids. Then I fly to New York. I'm there for 4.5 days. Then I fly to Boston. I'm back. Then I fly to Chicago. So I'm sort of all over the place.
Wow. Your travel schedule sounds like my old life.
Yeah. It wasn't what I intended, but it's happened.
I would have thought mistakenly that you'd spend most of your time in the Bay Area, but no.
No, well, so the Athena Alliance is expanding. So So
was it originally women in tech mostly, or?
Yes, but not by design, more by the fact that that's my where goes the leader goes the organization to
Right.
start. Right? So my community has been in tech for many, many years. And the Athena Alliance initially formed from a self-help group, if you will, that I had formed around myself starting in 2004. And grew in the
What
Bay
was, I hate
Area.
to interrupt you, but I'm going to a lot.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool.
What was the self-help group?
Well, so I was running a tech company. I had a psychology degree, and I did not have a tech background. Had never played with any of the internal workings of a computer, and never coded anything in my life. And here I was running this company that was full of sysadmins and network engineers and, et cetera. And so there was that issue. Then the other is that it's somewhat lonely at the top, particularly in a male dominated world. So I would go out and meet with
So
our
you
top
thought it
level.
was more lonely at the top for you than it would be for a guy?
No, but I think not necessarily. I mean, I think it's lonely at the top.
Yeah, exactly.
It just is. It's just that it's not as easy in technology. It's not as easy necessarily to network with someone of your background, whether it's gender or race or whatever, right? So if you're a woman, you're sort of, when you find other women, it's a little bit more like, oh my gosh, there's one more. And wait, now there's two, there's three. And so we start sort of creating our own posse. And that's what I did. I started creating a posse around me of, it started with female CIOs. And it started as 8 of us back in 2004, and it grew and grew and grew and grew. And that was the basis of the Athena Alliance. That's what we started with.
So your own personal self-help group.
Yeah,
The Sisterhood of Coco.
well, yeah, the Sisterhood of Coco became, that was the starting point, but it became much more over the years, and it became just a sisterhood, and it always kept that very intimate sense of collaboration and sharing, and none of us was the one person everybody else was waiting to talk to in the room, because we were all at equal levels, and that was very important. And so it started with me, but it took on an energy of its own.
And when did it become the Athena that we know and love today?
About 19 months ago.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
I thought it was older than that. That's
No,
cool.
yeah, yeah.
So you converted your posse into, would you consider it a business?
Yes, it is a
Yes.
business. So, so what happened was, so around 2012-ish, we started extending it into greater than just female CIOs. It became any C-suite level woman, and which was much more interesting and exciting at a certain point. It kind of gets tiring talking to the same sort of functional line.
So you have
And
every function, whether it's a
every
chief
function,
executive or a CMO or whatever it
all
is.
of it, all
Yeah.
of it, yeah. And then in 2015, late 2015, Senator Mark Warner was out here, from Virginia, and he's meeting with people in the Valley. And I don't even think he knows this story, but I'd love for him to know it. Maybe he'll watch your podcast.
A lot of people do.
Yeah, a lot of people do. But anyway, he was out, and there was a roundtable discussion with him that was hosted by Yvonne Wassenaar, then CIO of New Relic, now CEO of Airware, a drone company. She hosted this roundtable, and there were about 25 of us there. A few of them were Athena Alliance members before we were even Athena Alliance. We were actually calling ourselves the Power Chicks at that time. But anyway,
now, why did we change from the Power Chicks?
Okay, so Power Chicks, I think it's a little bit more my personality, but
Because Athena Alliance is sort of polite sounding, even.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, at a certain point, it's kind of like, if you want more people to take us seriously, we've got to sort of grow up the title a little bit. But at the same time, we've got a fun side to the organization, and we're humans, and Power Chick's fun, but you're going out and you're asking for large sums of money. Sometimes it helps to be a little bit more mature.
Have a name that sounds like you're a professional organization.
Yes, which we are. Any case, so Senator Mark Warner was there, and he sort of opened the table of these 25 women and just said, "Hey, I'm here to hear what's on your minds." And we didn't even get around introductions around the table before someone said, within like 3 people, boardroom. And the whole conversation went to the fact that you just don't see women in the boardroom in anywhere near the levels that we should be. And so he was listening intently, and that was fantastic. But what happened afterwards was I got this flurry of emails saying, "That's it, Coco, this is what you need to do, build the boardroom." And for a little while, 3 days maybe, I was like, what does that mean? I don't even know. I've been on my own board, but I hadn't really, it wasn't like I set out saying, I'm going to build an organization. It came to be through this network of women, this sort of point in time, and the energy from really what was kind of the last frontier for the type of women that were in my organization.
So I know this may sound corny, but the idea sort of revealed itself over time. Is that?
Yeah.
You were you're in this direction, and the right answer in terms of what problem you wanted to solve showed up.
Yeah, I'm sort of that camp in general in life. I'm an emergent sort of person. I try things, I experience things, and what sticks becomes strategy. Emergent strategy is sort of that idea that you're attuned to what works and what's timely, what's got energy behind it, those kinds of things, and then you move, and that's how Athena came to be.
So that was 2015.
That was, yeah. So we incorporated in April of last year, so 2016, and became a 501c3 nonprofit. We got a board in place, which now has one guy on it.
Now that's outrageous. What the fuck are men doing on your board, Coco?
Right.
Isn't that against the rules
and
here?
They're terribly underrepresented too.
Terrible.
Yeah.
So there's one lonely sausage.
Yes, there is. And
who is that man?
That man is an awesome guy named Scott Maxwell. He is the founding senior managing director of OpenView Venture Partners, and he is.
Boy, I bet he's happy to be a male on your board, given what's been going on in the venture world and tech world of late.
Yeah. I
mean that positively. He's looking really good in the face of a lot of guys looking really bad right now.
Yeah. Although I have to say, it wasn't like, great, I'm going to look good by getting on this board. I mean, I definitely had to coax him onto the board because his plate is pretty full. But he and his organization actually put $125,000 commitment behind Athena, and then a further commitment to help us raise another $500,000.
Wow.
And they did it. It wasn't just Scott, actually. It was
a handy guy to have around, huh, Coco?
He's a handy guy to have around, but he's also, you're like the provocateur.
I'm not trying to do anything. What about at least a quarter to maybe even a half sometimes of what I say is just my internal monologue going external without control.
No, but I think it's fair, so what we hear about in the broad media these days is all these stories of failure and stories of sort of lost behavior and lack of maturity and lack of direction for how to solve some of the big problems in our world and sort of from a social perspective. And there are good stories, and I'd say OpenView Venture Partners is a really good story, not in that they're different from other venture. I mean, they suffer from the same issues that all the other venture firms suffer from. They have no female investing partners. They have a non-notable number of female CEOs in their portfolio, and their companies, the companies that are in their portfolio, suffer from the same sort of lack of diversity that everybody else does. So it's not like they've solved the problem, or even that they don't look in some ways worse than some others. It's just that they're really showing up desiring to not just sign a pledge, which everyone's doing, or check a box, but to actually engage with an organization to widen their network in a really powerful way at senior levels to a whole group of people that they just don't naturally have access to. And that's the solution we provide.
So tell me about that solution. What
Yeah.
is Athena? Yeah.
Yeah, what is Athena? Okay. So the Athena Alliance is at this point there's two ways to think about us. We thought from the beginning that we were solving a very simple equation, right? On the one side of the equation, you have women who would like to be on corporate boards. And on the other side of the equation, you have corporate boards that are saying, where are the women? We'd like to have women on our corporate boards. Let's just assume everybody wants it, right? Very simple equation. And so we built our initial model around addressing those two sides of this equation. What we discovered was we had something far richer than that. So
in the beginning, you thought you were sort of
a broker,
a broker or a headhunter maybe, or a network or
a network / broker. Never, we still don't consider ourselves or operate like a recruiting firm. We're not a database. We're not we have one behind us, but that's not the
Do you
forward.
have some proprietary LinkedIn like system in the background?
We do have our systems in the background, yeah. But we're pretty transparent. So the two sides of our model. On the one hand, what happens is women join the Athena Alliance. So, for example, individual women like Amy Bunzel. She's the head of SVP of digital products for Autodesk. So she basically brings forward 90% of Autodesk revenue. They're like a $3 billion company, something like that.
But other than that, she's an inconsequential
She's
executive.
inconsequential, right? But this is important because she, on some levels, she is inconsequential, right? And so what I mean by that is
I was just being cheeky.
No, but she's not on the SEC filings, right?
She's not a, what is it, a 16B officer?
She's not. Yeah. So she's not
the executive in charge of delivering 90% of the revenue is not,
because she's still, so if you think about the tiers, right?
Does she run Americas or something, and she reports to like a CRO?
She reports, I don't know where the title, CTO I think is who she reports to. So she reports to the top level executives, right? But she herself is that next tier down. But you and me, from our vantage point, it's like, wow, she's a rock star.
Right.
Who wouldn't want her on their board? But she's not discoverable as easily as...
Because she's one layer down.
Because she's one layer down. But she's one layer down. She's SVP, right? Or let's take Allison Watson at Microsoft. She is corporate vice president of marketing North America. I think that's her title. Don't, I'm a little off on it. So she essentially...
I'm a little off on a lot, so you're just fine. You can be way off here.
Give me 90% truth. Okay, so there again, she's a corporate vice president, right? But she's not Amy Hood. She's not the CFO. However, she has a huge domain of responsibility within the organization. And so but she's not discoverable. So individual women will join Athena because they're very powerful. They've got a lot of skill, scale, ownership, industry influence, et cetera, to offer. But they come into that realm of, well, we don't know where the women are, right? Because they're not Sheryl Sandberg and the 20 people that you can name off the top, Amy Chang and whatever, right? There's that next layer down. They join us to get a lot of support around making sure that they can translate their great career into a story for the boardroom, making sure that they can, that they articulate that really well, that gets translated into the right verbal and written articulation, et cetera, et cetera. So what we do is we help them make sure that when they're in the right place at the right time and someone taps them on the shoulder, the right person, they never are caught off guard, right?
They're ready. They don't flinch.
They don't flinch. Yeah, exactly. So this isn't about board training. This is about you're one of 5 that's being interviewed. You're trying to get into the top school, right? Are you going to, with your essay and your interview and all of that, get people who want to advocate for you to get in? That's sort of the work we do there.
So is there do you have training for that, or how does, if I'm in this program, I wouldn't be in this program, but if I was a gal in this program I raise my hand, I'm a C-level executive, and I say, okay, Coco, set me up.
Yeah. So what we do is, so each woman who joins our membership, they're either one of two things. They're either an aspiring director, like the two women I just described, or they're what we call a pioneer, which is a woman on a public company board. And
Who's already on a public company board.
Yeah, already. And
not a private company. You're not.
No, yeah, we do help private companies, but our pioneers are public company board directors. So the aspiring director, what happens for her is she goes through about 14 hours of direct one-to-one executive coaching.
Wow.
She goes from Nancy to Gary to Hillary to Shanna to Nan to da. And each one of these individual people has a very specific role they play in coaching her around brand, her personal brand strategy, around the board bio, around her elevator pitch and voice and delivery, around thought leadership, around leveraging PR and the media, etc. In addition to that, our pioneers do mock interviews, journey sharing, hosting events that bring seated directors, board influencers, VCs, etc., together with our network. So our whole premise is, if we focus on connecting the two groups, the two sides, and our women are ready for the conversation, we will have success, right? So the other side of our model is that boards come to us directly, and we've had 45 opportunities to work with boards on board seats. Most of those are unique companies. A couple of them have a couple of board seats on them.
And what's the mix of private and public, Coco?
It's, I would say, 80% private and 20% public.
A lot in the Valley, in Silicon Valley?
All over the country. So
cool.
Very little that's outside of the country right now, but a lot.
Do you think do you have international aspirations? Is that
yeah, I've had some great
world domination?
Yes, but right now what we're doing is Microsoft is bringing us to Seattle, OpenView is bringing us to Boston. I'm exploring New York. I'm exploring Chicago. So we're basically.
I gotta believe you'd kill in places like New York.
Yeah.
Chicago.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I just think of my own experiences of the superpower women I met in big towns like that, particularly go places like New York and Chicago. And I would think it would be
absolutely
fertile. Yeah. So to speak.
Yeah. So to speak. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, again, we're only 18 months old, so we're moving at light speed but at the scale that we can scale.
Does it feel just like startups you've been a part of?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's fun. It's I mean, there's a team of, I think, 16 of us, but only 3 of us are full-time right now. It may be that 4 of us are full-time. I was talking to my head of operations, and
that's about to change.
That's about to change. Yeah. So, I mean, we've got a number of different players in the mix that are making it happen, and we're fully distributed.
So you have these C-level executives who come to you. They want to be seen, and they also want help, if I could, playing bigger.
Yeah.
Right. And getting experience from people who've seen the movie before and all that. And so there's this training you put them through.
Yeah.
Do you don't teach them sort of what I do when I'm on a board? We
facilitate connections to those. And sometimes we do board meeting simulations. We do we do some panel discussions around things like cybersecurity and what you need to know, and what's sort of the board perspective on that. So we do.
It's becoming a huge governance issue, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We do a lot of. I would say in all cases, I never use the word training. It's much more about coaching, hard lessons learned, right? Like sort of stories from the boardroom.
Do you have this term? This term is sort of showing up in my life a lot these days, and I think it's a bit of a funny term, but masterminding. Do you guys mastermind?
Oh, I guess so, yeah.
I think that came from the real estate industry. I have lots of friends who are in that business, and they mastermind their minds off.
It sounds so diabolical. Like I should be
I know, the first time I heard it, I thought it was from like a James Bond movie, or maybe Austin Powers or something. We're going to mastermind us.
Yes. But yeah, I guess that works. That, I very much think of it as I'm a super connector, and I imagine you're a super connector, right? We just sort of, it's in our DNA, and we find ways to connect people and ideas, and then to leverage those into bigger and bigger things.
On that one, do you know anybody who, I mean, I'm sure there's outliers and edge cases and all that, but when you said that, when you said you were a super connector and I must be a super connector, the first thing that popped in my mind is, no, I'm not a super connector. Because I'm actually, I know this sounds crazy, I'm a introverted extrovert.
Me too, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, but then I realized,
Right,
as
as
I
I
said,
said,
no,
no,
I
I
don't
don't.
do that. That's actually bullshit. I am a super
Yeah.
connector, like bigly.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
spend all, and now that I'm retired, I spend a lot of time connecting people to people for various things, whether it's entrepreneurs looking to
Yeah.
get funded, or people who are thinking about their next move, or entrepreneurs who want to bounce ideas off of our new companies, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I guess my question with that, Coco, is, aren't most people who get to, a reasonable level of success in business, aren't you by sort of default somewhat of a super connector?
No.
Really?
I don't think most people are, honestly. I think that people don't I think that they're not I think there's a skill set involved. There's an art and a skill that is involved in super connecting. So let me think about that for a second. So for example, I would consider people super connectors who find themselves in places that you wouldn't necessarily think are obvious, because they can see value in that place that other people don't necessarily see, and they find.
Like a dive bar at 3 a.m.?
But it could be, if you happen to know that, that's where the best surfers hang out, I mean,
Now we're talking.
right?
The board meet. That's the board meeting I want to go to, Coco.
Right. Actually, I have I should have brought it.
You should have brought it.
I'm gonna mail it to you. But I have a.
By the way, I'm so stoked you came.
Oh.
It's so great to have you here face to, like real face to face. I love Zoom.
Yeah.
But human to human is
way better.
Yes.
So this is a total tangent. So I was in Hawaii, and I got this fridge magnet. And the fridge, as I do, yeah, I do love fridge magnets. But anyway, so I got a fridge magnet that has like 5 roosters on it, and they're all basically the same. Like, your hens are not all looking the same, right? But these roosters
different
all
breeds.
They're different breeds, right? These roosters are all the same, mostly. And they've all got their boards under their wings. And it says, something like board meeting Kauai style. And I'm like, it's an all male board, and they're all white men.
Wow.
Even the roosters with their board meeting, with their boards.
Even the fridge magnets are sexualist.
Yeah.
To quote Ali G.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even the roosters on their board meeting in Kauai and their surfboards. Yeah.
And then, so what do you do for the corporations? If I don't know, are you allowed to talk about a corporate client in specific, or?
Yeah, I can talk about some. Yeah. So those 45 or so. First of all, one thing to know is that it's not like it's not like finding a top executive for your company, where you've got a level of urgency around making that happen because there's a hole in your organization. When someone's filling a board seat, sometimes it goes unfilled for a very long
some
time,
boards
right?
have, well, I don't know, what's the smallest board you've seen of a, in the parlance of our times, legit company?
Well, I would say where they start with us is like Series B, Series C, and they're
so they
looking
might
for
have
their
3
first,
people,
maybe
3,
5,
4 people.
Yeah.
And they might stay that way for a while, right?
And they might stay that way for a while. And there's, sort of the motivation to get that first independent director is a lot about scale. It's a lot about, we've made a big bet on the vertical in healthcare, and we don't have that expertise at the board level from a long-term planning strategy, sort of open doors, connection to the industry sort of place, right? So let's bring an independent in who can guide us there, or it may be a different kind of scale issue. It may be the founders have a brilliant idea, and they've built a product that's been in the SMB space and has been kind of like organically adopted. And now they're finding themselves in enterprise, and they really have to go up market, and they're thinking about, product scale and product design scale. And so they're looking for an Amy Bunzel who runs that at Autodesk, right? So that's sort of the smallest size company that comes to us. The largest that's ever come to us has been a Fortune 500 company. And I think of it as like a bell curve, right? On the one side of the bell curve, we had one company come to us that really, it was way premature. They were just getting seed funding and they just needed advisors, not board directors. And on the other side of the bell curve, we've had this one Fortune 500 company.
Will you do advisors as well?
No, only by accident, only as an unintended consequence. Yeah. But no, our focus is corporate, private or public company boards. And I see them falling into a couple of
regardless of the industry, Coco.
Regardless of the industry, although because of our network to date,
it's tech.
It's been largely tech, a little bit of retail. Working with one company that's like the equivalent of Costco in South America and Central America and the Caribbean.
Wow.
So that's not a tech company, but everybody's a tech company now, right?
Well, yeah, of course.
Whole Foods buys, or Amazon buys Whole Foods, and that changes everything.
Yep.
So I see it in kind of these realms. There's that Series B, Series C scale realm. Then there's the pre-IPO realm. There's the realm where we're 18 to 36 months out from IPO. We legitimately believe that. Our board believes that. Our investors believe that. Let's start planning for our public debut.
And, certainly for audit committee chair and things like that, there's urgency like there would be if you're, head of sales left and you need to replace her, right?
Well, so at that point, they're just starting to build that function into the board.
Right.
And, they don't have it yet. So they're saying, well, we need to build an audit function on the board. We need to think about a governance function on the board, a comp function on the board, risk. We're starting to think about what the public market will want, will demand.
Kind of key, quote unquote, committees, right?
And the key committees. And then there might also be, and it would be really great to have experience that's gone through the IPO process to help lead us through that process, right? So there's sort of those kinds of things. And then there's the newly public. So in the newly public realm, the investors are starting to roll off, and now they're now they've got open seats, right? So they're looking for more experience in the public market. And most of the time that is like, do you have public board experience? But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's, I want you to be in this sort of a function in a Fortune 500 company that can provide voice of the customer or industry access or global expansion, whatever those kinds of things are. And then you've got the long-term in the public realm, and either fear of stagnation, fear of irrelevance, or just natural board turnover. And those opportunities, I think, become more interesting because they allow you to kind of open the door around what should be around that table, because everything is different today than it was 10 years ago.
Isn't everything today than it was 10 months ago?
Yeah, definitely on some levels, right?
It feels that way to me.
Let's look at our government. Yeah.
I was talking. Yeah, well,
but we don't
have to have that. Yeah, we don't want to do that.
I saw that on the notes.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of other places for that. But I was talking to a very good friend and mentor of mine, a guy who's probably at least 20 years older than me. And he said, everything's changed now. This what's going on, summer of 2017, and then sort of Harvey Weinstein, boom. He said it's going to be completely different going forward.
What does he see as the completely different?
What he said was that what all of this has brought is obviously huge awareness of this. I don't even know what to call this horrible criminal, in some cases, behavior to the fore. But what he said was more important was the women who have come forward, how they were received, not just in the media, but in the world. And so the fact that they were treated seriously and the world responded the way the world did, to the point where, Weinstein's instantly fired. There's
Mhm.
none of this.
Protecting that.
Well, and there wasn't even like, oh, well, he's innocent until proven guilty. No, when I don't know what the total number is, but when 60 fucking women come forward, you're probably an asshole. So you're fired. And so, that didn't happen, for example, at Fox with O'Reilly, right? They
Right.
paid that gal $30 million
Yeah.
to keep her quiet, and on
Yeah.
and on and on. And same thing with Roger Ailes, and a lot of other examples. And so his point was, in the past, when you had a Roger Ailes or somebody like that, they would just pay gals off and keep it down, and the gals would accept that, and because they thought, I don't know, they must have thought it was the best option, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, now that the gals aren't taking those kind of options and they're coming public, and the response in the world is positive, and probably equally as importantly, the companies go, oh yeah, you're fucking fired. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about this. Or Uber, or all of it, right? There's been so much of it, it's hard to keep track.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's what he was saying, is that there is a ability to be heard in the world today that didn't exist. Some of it is, technology and social media, but a lot of it is just people being a lot more open. And so as people get heard and then action gets taken,
Mm-hmm.
and there are repercussions for this kind of behavior, and oftentimes criminal behavior, shit's different. And so that's, I think, if I'm understood him right, that's I think what he was trying to say.
Yeah, well, I think that you get to a critical mass, and that creates momentum, and whatever that spark is, and that gives you enough to generate momentum, and not allow for a blind eye any longer. It's like, if you look back to the suffrage movement, for voting rights for women in this country, or white women at first, that there were a couple times in history where we thought that movement was going to have a result. I think it was the late 1800s, where the first time that the push was for women to really get that vote that we thought might happen, but it didn't actually get ratified and put into existence until 1919, 1920. So, something has to happen, I think, that creates that sort of energy. It's not like, I think about this occasionally too. It's like, why did we all of a sudden wake up to this? What happened that made us all wake up and go,
is it
wait a
because
minute,
you
every
started
board is
Athena?
men. Yeah,
Is that, were you the tipping point, Coco? Well, no, because I was thinking about it, and I'm probably a horrible person for even having this thought, but from a purely business point of view,
yeah,
you are now in the right place at the right time, aren't
right?
you?
Yeah, no,
Right? Like as a business,
yeah.
and this is going to sound terrible, but sort of you got lucky in terms of how
Yeah, how did you
the
time the
environment,
market,
exactly.
Coco?
You timed the market, right?
Yeah, no, seriously.
I mean, like, is there a public board of consequence in the world that isn't sitting there going, holy shit, how do we get more women on this board right now? I mean,
yes, actually, there are a lot of boards that that aren't doing that. So
in an
the reason I
all-male
say
board
that,
situation?
no, yeah, I think what, if you look at the studies from PwC and various others, but they are illustrating that the majority of men in public company boards, don't believe that diversity actually makes a difference to the bottom line or to the performance of the boards. So there's not actually, with the exception of pressure from, say, activist investors, that, without like external pressure, there's not internal pressure that's happening. There is an internal pressure going, wow, we just woke up and said, why is it that we have an all male board? There's some boards are doing that, but a lot of boards are still sort of, we have to get the best candidate, and that means that women aren't as likely to join the board as another guy that I've already had my eye on, and there's still the old behavior that's at play.
So let me ask you this question that might get me in trouble, but I think it's an important question to look at, and I think I want to hear your answer.
Yeah.
Why do we need to have women on boards?
Yeah. So I like to think of it as, I get this question actually, and I mean, I get it. I get the question. Like, it's sort of like
And
when
by
a
the way,
kid
I
says,
don't,
no, but it's
I'm going to
like,
get my ass in a lot of trouble in this dialogue. As a
no,
man, I find this whole environment terrifying because it's hard to
it,
know where to stand. But I don't give a shit, right? I'm
yeah,
gonna.
yeah, that's cool.
I'm legitimately curious about how
Yeah.
you think about all this.
It's sort of like, if your kid, right, you say to your kid, I really need you to eat your broccoli because it's good for you. And your kid's like, I feel good. Why do I need to eat my broccoli? And there's so much to explain behind that. You're just like, just eat the fucking broccoli. Right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, at a certain point, you'll get it. Right? It's a little like that. I feel like it's a little like that because it is hard to explain why does it make a difference? I can say, well, studies show. And people say, well, those studies were can we really say that there's a correlation when the studies say that the return on investment, the longevity of companies, the return on equity, all Morgan Stanley, Catalyst, like all these companies are doing studies that say it shows that when you have diversity, the companies perform better. But there's enough counter to those studies that say, yeah, but was it, did you ask the question the right way? Did you analyze the data the right way? Did you da 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 da? And so there's sort of this
But that's
debate still.
always true, no matter what point of view you're trying to put forward, right?
Right. So the way I like to put the argument forward is, look, we need cognitive diversity and we need relational diversity, right? So if I were to raise my son in a world of only women, there would be a perspective he's missing, right?
Okay,
We
can I
know
stop
that.
you right there?
Yeah.
So there's this emerging sort of, I don't even know what they call themselves, but there's this emerging point of view that says, hey, listen, you are, I don't even know what the right term is. I'll just use bigoted for the lack of any term, to even ascribe um, gender differences. We should treat each other like we're the same. And so the fact that you're a woman shouldn't matter at all to me, right? And so if you take that to the extreme, well, if we're all the same and we should treat each other all the same and men and women are the same, why do I need women on the board if men and women are the same? Now, I think it's bullshit, by the way, because I think there's a very big difference. But there are people out there today trying to evangelize essentially that there's no real difference between men and women, and ascribing meaningful differences to men and women makes you bigoted or racist or sexist or something.
Okay, so this is sort of maybe this is a little too deep to get on the time frame
We
we
can go
have.
as deep. Well,
Well, I think
I have as much time as you.
in general, I think of we have a tendency to put things into buckets, right? Men are like this and women are like that. Women are better at multitasking. Men are better at focus. Women actually see better through peripheral vision. Men see better. Some of this is like biological fact, and some of it's
But there are people who argue that you saying there are biological fact differences that show up in our personalities and our way of being makes you
bigoted, right?
something.
But
Yeah.
what I'm trying to get at is there are the averages, right? And then there are the outliers. And I think what is better rather than to polarize and say men are like this and women are like that, and the other polar says no, we're all exactly the same, don't view anybody any different. Well, neither one of those are right. They're both wrong, and they both have elements of truth.
And then so if I take you back to your son,
yeah,
you feel strongly that you shouldn't raise him in a female only environment. That's where you were going?
well, and that doesn't mean that I don't think that a lesbian couple raising a kid is a bad thing. I'm totally all for that. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that if he was never exposed to men and he was only ever exposed to women, right? And that was sort of the dominance of his experience, he would not have a perspective that men have. And I think that you can't start fresh today and say everything that is history doesn't matter. The history exists. Men have more of a history around the way that they were brought up, to open doors for women, to, be responsible for fixing the car, whatever it happens to be. There is a history that we have, right, that has shaped men generically and has shaped women generically. That exists. I don't know how that necessarily plays into the way we make decisions, but women do believe we make decisions differently than men, and
You think that, Coco?
I think I do on certain things. Like, I think that,
So
for
if you and
example,
I were on a board together and we were presented with, subject X,
yeah, I might
you would
look at,
have at least slightly different lens, you think?
depends on what subject X is, right? Let's say subject X is that we're going to expand into West Africa. I may say, I don't know anything about West Africa, but initially my thoughts go to sort of cultural issues, goes to, and maybe yours goes to infrastructure issues. I don't know what they go to.
My head went to distribution. Like, how the fuck are we going to get shit there?
Okay, so my head immediately went to the people, right? And I don't know if that's a gender-based thing. I don't know, right? And I don't think that it matters whether it's a gender-based thing. I think what matters is that you want different perspectives around the table. And there's half the sky that are women, right? We are half the sky. And we have, over the history of, for as long as humans have existed, had different roles than men. And we have had different roles in in raising family. We have had, and we don't want to be burdened by those roles and tied to those roles and not allowed to extend beyond those roles in the same way that men don't. But the fact that we've had them has shaped some of our thinking and our experience. And
Well,
so I
and
need to
there's
bring
some of
that.
them, and of course you could choose which ones for you as an individual, but there's a lot I like about being a dude.
Yeah.
And can I share a quick story?
Yes.
So yesterday, I'm in the house and I hear my wife Carrie screaming, like blood curdling screaming outside in the garden. So I go charging into the garden, and I am expecting she's not a person that does this, so something's
Okay.
up.
Something's really bad.
So there's a hawk in the hen house.
That would make me scream, yeah.
And she's locked it in there. And one of our hens, Beatrice, the one with those amazing feathers that you held, she's in the nesting box inside the hen house making an egg.
Uh-huh.
So if the hawk goes in there, she's finished.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got Beatrice out. We have this door for the eggs, and I just got her out that way. So now the hawk's locked in the hen house. And the dialogue is, what do we do with the hawk? And so I said, well, this is really simple. We get a towel, we throw it over that fucking thing, we grab it, and we put it in a big jug of water, and we drown that fucking thing.
Oh my God.
That's what I want to do.
Why do you want to drown it?
It tried to kill my babies.
Huh.
And so I'm protecting, so I'm angry about that.
Yeah.
And more importantly, I want to protect my hens. And so if this hawk had the balls to fly into the hen house, I don't want it on planet Earth anymore, because I don't want to do it again. So I want to make sure there's ongoing protection of my girls from a hawk that's now demonstrated a desire and an ability to kill them.
Yeah.
So Carrie says, well, okay, I completely agree with you. The hawk needs to go, but we shouldn't kill the hawk. And oh, by the way, it's probably illegal. So she puts it in. So anyway, we put it in the car. We cover it with the towel, put it in a animal carry bag or animal carry case, for the car, like you put a dog or cat in. And she, drove it up into the hills and gave it a new address.
Yeah. Nice.
So I guess my point is, I think that's a great example of the male and female perspective coming together to make this work.
Yeah.
Right. She immediately goes to, well, I don't want to kill the hawk. I immediately go to, well, I don't give a shit about the hawk. I want to protect our girls.
Yeah.
And between the two of us, what's the solution to protect the girls and not kill the hawk?
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
And so And I had that experience in business over and over and over again. You know, as a CMO in tech, I can remember at Mercury Coco going maybe 6 months without seeing a male resume because it's
Hmm.
just, you know, women gravitate towards marketing in tech, typically marketing and HR, as you know.
Hmm.
And so, you know, I spent a lot of my career working with a lot of women. I mean, I was used to being in meetings where it was equal or I was in the minority. That was not an uncommon experience. And so I agree, you know, that there are different perspectives.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that the thing that is the danger is we get hung up on, um, is it biology? Is it experience? Is it, whatever it is? And we label, and we label these things in a way that makes them arguable. And what we need to do instead is say varying perspectives from varying backgrounds is valuable, right? And how do you get varying backgrounds? Well, you get varying backgrounds by looking for different kinds of life experiences and different kinds of um, life experiences. And that comes from race and gender and
So
et
does our
cetera, right?
board need to be the United Nations? If we're, you know, if you're the CEO of a company today, do you have to?
So increasingly, yeah. I mean, we're very close to, I forget which year it's supposed to be, and maybe it's already hit, but where we will not have a single majority race in our country, right? So white will not be the majority race. And maybe we've hit it. I'm not sure. I have to
Yeah,
look back at those
I
notes.
know we're getting close.
We're getting close. And so so what we have to think about. So I have layers of diversity that I think we need on boards. So first of all, let's just take role diversity. So boards are stewards of the long-term success of the company, right? And they're stewards on a variety of different levels. They're stewards on a financial level. They're stewards on governance, sort of on a governance level. Are we sort of properly policying and policing and structuring our business? They're stewards on an equity, a sort of responsibility of compensation to
Equal
revenue,
pay for
and
equal work.
well, and also
Oh, and
just
also
from a
the disparity
shareholder
between the
from a
CEO.
shareholder perspective, yeah, are you properly using our money? And compensation is a big piece of that,
Our
right?
CEO makes 500 million a year, and our lowest employee makes
Yeah, and
minimum
they
wage. That kind of stuff.
that kind of stuff. And then, yeah, and is that designed to create a healthy company, right? And so there's stewards on all these different levels, right?
Are you
But
seeing? I hate to interrupt you, but you know, we had Tony Chan. He was on Legends and Losers,
uh-huh.
and he wrote this incredible book called Good People. And I should connect you guys.
Yeah.
He's so
See, there you go with the super connector.
yeah, no, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Because this topic of the role of the company beyond EBITDA has been in my face a lot. And so he talks about purpose before profit. And the role of a company is not just to uh, capture short-term value, but create long-term value and do that in a powerful way in the world, so that we have a responsibility for who he says it way better than I do. But and so I guess my question is, are you also seeing boards talking about the way he put it that I loved? He talked about it from a recruiting point of view. And if I remember what he said, for the most part, we recruit for qualifications, not character.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess all that is to say, do you also see boards having this purpose before profit, character? Who are we in the world? What's the difference that we're making? Are we truly making a contribution to all constituents, customers, employees, you know, our channels and partners and our investors, and you know, and the world at large? Sort of, you know, if you think about the Yvon Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia, you know,
Mm-hmm.
his kind of a mindset.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or what Mark Benioff has been credited for too, right?
Fantastically, I mean,
Um,
incredible.
well, so no, not
No.
not a lot, and I'll tell you why. And so when I have conversations with them, I always try to tie it back to the business, because I think that I'm trying to capture the most hearts and minds, not the, not the most evolved hearts and minds necessarily, right? So I think the really evolved hearts and minds do see patience around purpose and long-term power as being really important. But the problem with a lot of companies is that, your shareholders are driving to an exit, right? Your shareholders, when you're a private company, are the ones who put the money in, and they're driving to a return and a time for return, and they don't have a way of measuring how, sort of the longer term impact impacts the short term, right? So they're more like, that's why we put up with an Uber until we can't any longer. It's like, wow, the guy's just killing it, and we want to see
But
that.
don't you think, to give an example, our friend Bruce Cleveland, how we met.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a discussion that's important to him, right? The role of the company in the world.
Yeah. No, I think it's not that it's not important to people, and to some people. I'm just saying that I think that's still a minority. Am I seeing boards talk about this? No. But what I think they need to be talking about, like, even if they don't get there, right, yet, the logic argument that I think is really valuable is, look, you have to steward this entire business, right? And from a long-term perspective, there are a variety of roles that are the most important roles to have on the board to steward that. Traditionally, we think of them as CFO and CEO, but they're not. CFO and CEO, yes, but the head of people, right? It tends to be an expert on comp, tends to be an expert on equity packages, is a complete expert on succession planning. So many components of what a board needs to be responsible for. Oh, and by the way, people, right? So, and they're woefully underrepresented on boards. So there's a people
And by the way,
component.
if I could, and I'm a sample set of one, so
yeah,
take it for what it's worth. But I get recruited onto boards because boards now say they want somebody
CMO.
who understands, well, not just CMO,
market,
but category design, category strategy. And Jennifer Johnson, who's the CMO at Tenable, she was the head of marketing, but she was a marketing ding dong at Andreessen Horowitz, and her and I worked together.
Marketing ding dong.
Ding dong is sort of a affectionate term for senior level person.
I thought it was like a Twinkie, a version of a Twinkie.
Is it? Yeah. Well,
it's the white one, right?
Are they called ding dongs?
Something. One of them is the tasty cake ding dong or whatever.
Okay. Well, maybe that's, I don't know. Maybe that's how I connected. I always called senior executive, big ding dongs.
Yeah.
Anyway, she was at Andreessen Horowitz. Yeah. So she's a big ding dong marketing executive. And so what she shared on Legends and Losers, actually, I didn't know it until she told me, was that as she was sort of doing her paces before she took her last job at Tenable, the security company, she said that the number one criteria for CMOs today is category design.
Yeah.
And so as the world's beginning to understand, hey.
Wasn't that the whole point of the last session we had with Wildcat, right?
Exactly, because Bruce.
If you're not going to design a category, then you're not going to kill it.
That's right. And Bruce, God bless him, has been a huge category design ambassador and an evangelist. And anyway, so I guess what I'm saying is it feels like, this is from a guy who's not on any boards, so I may be talking out of my ass, but the agenda of boards is starting to broaden.
Yeah. So where I was going with that is, you should have a CHRO on your board. You should have a CMO on your board. The whole idea around digital transformation, what I think some companies that have been around a long time are missing about that is that they tend to think of that as CIO, CTO, head of engineering. But when you look at a digital first company, everything about that business is different. Right? I mean, business operations experience is key. So, for example, a story I was going to tell you, because you said, can I talk specifically about one of the boards? So one of my current favorite CEOs is a guy named Rick Smith, and they're under pressure here and there.
What's the company?
Well, they were Taser International, and they're now Axon.
I didn't know Taser changed their name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
So Taser, right? Let's think about the sort of evolution of Taser.
Axon?
AXON.
Huh.
Okay,
Why is that a better name than I mean, Taser's
because
a legendary brand.
yeah, and it has its challenges as a legendary brand.
Well, listen,
But
a lot of brands have negativity associated to them, but
this is here, I'll tell you
do
why.
they still call the product a Taser?
They still have tasers, but they also have the Axon wearable cameras, which is why. So they acquired, I believe, a company called Axon, and then that became the parent or the not
The
the parent, but
brand.
the brand. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Rick, I see as a very smart CEO. He originally had a hardware company, the tasers, right?
Yeah.
So he evolves into the wearable cameras as well, and he starts to think. I mean, I'm sure it's
Were
more
they
than just him.
the principal category designer of that market? Do you know? Like, did they?
Certainly the taser, but
No, the
not the
wearable
wear. I
cameras.
don't
Are
know if
they
they were.
the pioneers?
I don't know if they were the pioneers, but I think they are for sure in a position to be the dominant player because of, I think it's 18,000 law enforcement agencies across the US. They're in 17,000 of them. I could be off by 100, but they are the dominant player, and they're broadening internationally like crazy. But here's the thing.
And
So they
cops
go
can't wear
from
GoPros.
it might be more fun.
Oh, what's wrong with me?
Yeah. So anyway, so here they are, right? Their first hardware, then they become sort of hardware, software, analytics. Then they become this cloud-based company. So now they're transforming the view of the organization from being a alternative weapon, a non-lethal weapon, to being truth and transparency and social justice. It's a very different story, right?
It's
And
complete transformation, sounds like.
it's a complete transformation, but in my view, it's not too much of a leap, right? I mean, from the start, and this is where Taser, I think, has had sort of a hard battle, is that from the start, um, Rick's goal was to stop killing, right?
Yeah,
And
stop killing Rick. That's a great one. I'm with you.
yes, right. But unfortunately, the Taser has gotten mixed up in that a little bit, right? And so he's at this place where he can start to evolve that. So anyway, so he's transforming his board. And so he brings Hadi Partovi onto his board, the founder of Code.org and various other things. Brett, is it Brett Smith? I'm probably drawing a blank on I'm drawing a blank on his name, but the former CTO of Facebook onto his board. And through the Athena Alliance, he brings Julie Cullivan onto his board. And her background is what we were talking about. She's a CIO background, but she's also an SVP of business operations. So she really understands M&A, the whole sales operations. Sales operations huge for them because they invested heavily in global expansion.
So she's a very broad executive with deep technology and ops.
Right. So I think he's building the kind of board one should build, which is, okay, I'm transforming this organization. What is the thought leadership of the future that really understands a digital first business? And so, so that's
wow.
That's
But cool to transform the board while he's transforming the company. I mean, it's a big shift.
Yeah, I think so.
Pioneering new categories. And that's very, very cool because the reality is the number of companies like Taser who are willing to pioneer Axon, new categories. That's a very unusual thing, as you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's brilliant in that. And I wish them the best because they do have, they're polarizing or there's people who fall on different camps around the product itself and the product use.
So, Coco, how do you think about, because this is something I don't know how to rationalize in my head, how do you think about diversity and meritocracy? So when the people say, well, we're going to hire the best person for the job. So how do you think about that? Now, I get that the best person for the job probably isn't always a white dude. I mean, I'm not completely stupid, but how do you think about those things in your head?
Yeah. I think the place where that becomes a challenge and where the sort of meritocracy argument is being played in the boardroom, at least, is, well, we really need a CEO of a software company that's $1 billion that they took public. If that's the meritocracy if that's the bar we're
I
trying to
see.
hit, right? Then then you've really narrowed the playing field
I see.
significantly,
So
right?
you think people hide behind meritocracy when they're actually
I think that they make a lot more compromises than they think they make. They don't often bring that person in. Yes, they shoot for the moon, but they don't get the moon. But if what you say is I'm only ever gonna, I'm gonna keep my eyes on that moon, that moon, that moon. Don't bring me a woman because she can't hit that moon. She's not that. Then you won't get women, but you're not gonna get it anyway, and you'll settle for a guy that you could have had a woman for. And that's often, I think,
okay?
what ends up happening. But I think even when that doesn't happen, the other issue is that that's not always the most appropriate, best solution. You don't necessarily need that, and if you do, you need one of that. You don't need your whole board to have that. So it's sort of setting bars that we don't live to and we don't really need is one of the meritocracy issues. But
So
across
I
the
just want to
board,
make sure I completely flatten this. So you think that the spec gets wired in a way
yeah.
that it yields the same result?
Yeah, so some evidence around that. There was a study that was done in the UK, and I'd have to dig it up around the percentage of first time board members that are men versus first time. The argument of how many that have to and boards are constantly settling for first time board members that are men.
Settling. That's funny.
I mean, that's the
I
term,
think when
right?
I was a first-time board member, I was pretty badass about it, frankly. I thought I was a pretty good first-time board member.
I mean, there's a first for everything, and
I'm just playing with you.
but on the meritocracy issue, so I just talked to these awesome guys. You should interview them yesterday. Alexi and Eddie, and they are the co-founders of a company called BetterUp. And there are 67 people in the company right now. They're growing by, I think, 3 a week or something along those lines, and they're just crazy expanding. They are a Series B company. They're sort of right there in that like Silicon Valley, 2 dudes that build a company. They have 60% of their employees are women. 47% of their their top leadership are women. Half of their board are women. And when they hire by design for diversity. They had 2 of their engineers come up to them and they said, "Hey, can we go to Afrotech? Will you support that?" And they said, "Sure, we will." And I said, "Alexi, what's Afrotech?" And he's like, "I'd never heard about it either." I was like, "I bet that's a great place to recruit African-American tech people." Right? He's like, "Yeah."
I don't know. I'm guessing it might be a little bit about that. I don't know.
So, and this is the point, is that like from their vantage point, they're like, this bullshit about meritocracy, we have an awesome company that's killing it.
So what you're saying is we don't know what we don't know when the spec is this tight that only yields what it yields.
And when we continue to play the game the way we've always played it, like the Moneyball movie, right? If you always play the game the way you've played it, and you don't think about the new way to play it, you miss out on a lot. And I think this for me is kind of the sweet spot that I get really excited about, is the simplicity of the model that I thought I had was boards want women and we've got them. Well, what OpenView sort of showed me.
Do you have binders full of women?
We have binders full of women.
Sorry, that one was just sitting there.
I know. I love
and
it.
actually the poor thing about that,
political.
I don't know Mitt Romney at all, but I don't know, you tell me, did he mean it as bad as it came across?
It's not about meaning, it's about ignorance.
Yeah.
It's not the intent, it's the ignorance of not understanding that. I don't know. I think that's largely
it's
what
the insensitivity of it. Well, and
I think a lot of the stuff that people get pegged with that is just easy to peg is ignorance that shouldn't be there. And it's not that this person intended to be really, an
so
asshole.
What are the things? So let's have at it. Come on, Coco. What are the things that men are ignorant about that we should not be ignorant about?
um, okay. Here's a big one. I think, and I haven't thought this through. So, and we're on camera. I'm not supposed to think
Nah,
about that.
we're
But
just sitting here having a coffee.
yeah, well, where's my coffee?
Well, water. You want me to go get you some coffee?
No, it's okay.
We have Verve here.
I see that we have booze.
We do. We have lots of whiskey. We have 3 different kinds of whiskey always available.
Awesome.
Do you want a little?
I do have a self-driving car, so.
Okay, well, here, I'll give you
no,
a little snoot
I'm
of
just
whiskey.
kidding. I don't want it. No, I don't want it. No.
How about a little taste of this Wayward whiskey from Santa Cruz?
Is this the advertisement part of the session?
Yeah, this is the commercial break for Wayward whiskey from Santa Cruz.
Okay, hold it up to the camera.
I talk about them all the time, and maybe they could at least give me a free one every once in a while for
they should.
For the love of whiskey.
For the
just
record,
give you a little.
Is it before or afternoon?
It's absolutely afternoon.
Okay, so it's 5 o'clock somewhere in the words of Jimmy Buffett.
Yes, we love Jimmy Buffett. Isn't he awesome? You just hear Jimmy Buffett music and you just feel fantastic. Okay, so educate me.
Oh, shit. I thought this was going to let me off the hook. I'm like, he's completely forgotten the question.
Oh, now he's sort of focused on the booze and he's going to get himself drunk and then we can forget about the whole thing.
Okay,
hey, my mind might be whiskey
soaked.
So
knows this is actually happening. All right, here we go. Bottoms up.
Here's to Athena.
That's nice. Good job, Wayward.
Yeah. Right? Smooth, right?
And you can get them here in Santa Cruz?
Yeah, I don't know what their distribution strategy is, but yeah, they're
so I just downed mine.
Well, I poured a little more into mine than I poured into yours, but I'm happy to give you another snoot if you like.
No. I'm not So one of the things I think that men sometimes are unconscious about. So I have a son. I have a 16-year-old son, and I have a 12-year-old daughter. And there is a general power difference between men and women, and sometimes I think even in the most sort of subtle ways, men don't. And
I assume you don't mean physical.
I do mean physical.
Oh, you do mean physical.
Generally speaking, there is a physical power difference between men and women. That's not
meaning
always
most
true.
Men are stronger than most women.
Yeah. On average, right? And maybe not even average,
so
right?
You think I could take you?
I'm sure you can take me. I might have some tricks, I might throw a chicken at you or something and then give myself some time. But yeah, so there's a little bit of a power difference issue, right? And men like Harvey Weinstein, they get that. If they block the door for the woman who they brought up to their apartment, she's going through her mind going, can I get past you? Right? Like there is a power aspect of that, the physical power aspect.
I'm glad. Can we talk about this?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a bummer you didn't get to meet Carrie because you guys should love each other so much. So we'll make that happen.
Particularly because she's an artist. I love it.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, what she's done around here. So she's 5 feet.
Oh, she's smaller than me.
Yeah.
Rarely taller than someone.
And if a guy my size, I'm 6 feet, 190.
Yeah.
If a guy my size attacks her, he's absolutely in the hospital and he might be in a pine box.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So she's got defense. Yeah.
Yeah. So
good.
Kickboxing, Krav Maga.
Yeah.
Like 3-4 times a week.
Yeah.
Fierce as fuck.
Yeah.
And if Harvey, and so I've asked, with all this stuff going on, I said to her, baby, have you ever been harassed? Has any of this stuff happened to you? And she said, fuck no, because if it did, I would tear their balls off. And she would. She's ferocious. She's fierce. And so, look, I'm not excusing any of the bad behavior at all. Of course not. But there's a lot of work that needs to get done there. But the part no one's talking about is that part.
Of women learning kickboxing? Or what am I missing?
Of learning some self-defense. So, for example, I've read in our country, the statistics are 1 in 4 gals who goes to college has some kind of a horrible sexual something happen to them, some kind of an attack.
Yeah, I believe it.
I've read it multiple ways. I don't know if it, but you hear it.
Yeah.
Anyway, whether it's true or not, for me, what it says is all the young gals in my life spend some time with Uncle Christopher before they go to their first year of college.
Yeah.
And we teach them how to handle themselves
Yeah.
and all the things to look for and so forth and so on. And so, you know, if
But
you and I had a bench pressing contest right now, I would probably win. I'm probably physically stronger than you, but there's a lot you can do.
yeah, or I haven't made my point maybe is, so my son has a friend who I call Bam Bam. He's six whatever. He's on the football team, big guy. Like
16.
he's 16. He's a big guy. And he will play with people, like forget male or female. And not and overlook the immediate power dynamic he has between them. And this isn't a gender thing. So now I'm just sort
He
of
just
wiping it out.
forgets he's a big Newfoundland dog or whatever.
Exactly. That's more my point, right? There are Harvey Weinsteins who will use that power. But there are also a lot of men who don't think about that power. But women think about that power. There is that dynamic. There's the, oh shit, you could break me, right? Like there's a
So
little
when
bit
you
of
and
that.
I meet, we meet at the Wildcat event.
Mm-hmm.
Explain to me what that's like on this plane, so to speak.
There's nothing going on that plane unless I feel some sort of a threat, some sort of a like, you know, if I'm in a situation where I would feel a threat. So
Okay, so
I'm not saying that it's like
so when you meet,
I don't meet you and go, oh my God, he could, you know, like I don't
so that's not
immediately
there
see
in the
you as
front of your.
scary. No,
Okay, so that's not in the front or the back of your head.
No, I'm just saying what I think sometimes is seen as playful from one perspective is seen as potentially um, is seen for maybe playful, but playful plus risk.
So what would be an example in business? Like if I slapped you on the back, or like what would be?
No, I think so. I think the example in business in that one, just that one. So I mean, I was sort
Yeah,
of
this
starting
power.
there.
You
That
started with the
yeah,
power
the power
dynamics.
dynamic.
I really want to understand it.
Yeah, no, I think that would be more in a situation where it's a little bit more where it feels casual, but then all of the kind of all of um, the external safety zones have been removed, you know, and you don't have kickboxing or whatever. Like you happen to be in a place where you're alone with somebody and they make a pass at you and it's inappropriate and you didn't want it and you sort of make that clear. There's a little bit of a fear factor that might go off, right?
Got it. That I understand
And that's
completely.
all I'm saying.
Okay, I thought
And I
maybe
think
just
that
in a general situation.
no. I'm not saying in a general situation. I'm just
Okay,
saying that's one thing that men don't necessarily think about
we
as
don't
being.
have to worry about that,
You
or
don't have to worry about that. Yeah.
as much.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is that generally speaking, in the realm of executive leadership, in the realms of technology, engineering, there are places where women are the minority. And when you are the minority, whatever the group is, whether it's you're the minority because you're gay, you're the minority because you're black, whatever the reason is that you're the underrepresented group, you're a little bit more sensitive to what it takes for you to be successful. And the other side doesn't have those barriers. They don't have the like, if I operate wrong here, if I say the wrong thing, if I'm flippant, it's not a
But
risk.
is that?
And I think
Maybe.
that's part of the reason women hold themselves back.
So, what's the thought in your head? Walk me through the specifics of what you just said so that I understand it.
Okay, so a number of things happen, and this isn't sexual harassment stuff, but we see that women don't progress, right? Women don't progress up the ladder. So we are about 50% of all entrants into the workforce, right? We are then, these numbers are off slightly, but then we go to 33 at first promotion, and then we're like 20 something at second promotion. And then by the time you get to senior vice president, we're like 20%. And Then you get to C-suite, we're 17%. You get to the boardroom, we're also 17%. That's public company, large public company data. If you get into tech realm, private company, it's much worse, right? So why does that happen? Well, it happens for a combination of reasons. Some of it is unconscious bias. Some of it is like we sort of surround ourselves with what we already have around us that's comfortable and feels right. So some of it is on men, and some of it is that women opt out. So part of the reason women opt out.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. I was just about to ask you, why do women opt out?
Yeah. So part of the reason that women opt out is because we presume that we won't be supported because we are the underrepresented group. So we're not used to seeing our needs supported. We're not used to seeing women succeed in advance of us. So we assume that because we don't have 100% of the criteria, we shouldn't apply.
So I just want to make sure I completely get this, Coco, that because we don't see others being successful doing it, we prejudge the situation and we just don't go for it.
Sometimes we don't go for it. Yeah, that's
true.
I
don't mean that in a shitty way. I want to understand what the thinking is. And sometimes we
don't believe we can design it for our own success. And so we don't go for it.
So let me ask you this question. Since starting Legends and Losers, I've had so many amazing dialogues with so many people. I'm thinking more than I think I've ever thought in my life, right? And one of the things I realized for myself in some of these dialogues with people is, in order to be successful at whatever, it makes a tremendous difference. It's not always a requirement, because sometimes people pioneer completely new things, of course, but it's often important to see someone where you go, oh, so for example, I had my mentor and dear friend Bix Bixon on Legends and Losers, and he made a tremendous difference for me in my life at about 18 years old. And a big part of it were the things he taught me, the things he said that taught me important things. But an equally big part of it was I saw myself in him. And so I guess what I'm saying is what you're saying, that we somehow need to see, not all of us, but many of us, myself included, somewhere along the line, you have to see someone and have this moment. It's almost like God taps you on the shoulder and goes, psst, kind of that way. Is that what's going? Is it that sort of? It also goes basic.
Yeah, it is that basic on. I mean, there's other variables, right? But in that variable, it is at a fundamental level, and that variable that it is that basic. It's so I actually was on the board of a company called MentorNet, a nonprofit, a number of years back. And this organization, their focus was to get women and underrepresented minority men, i.e. Black men and Hispanic men, through STEM programs, so science, technology, engineering, math, in college, right? And the success rate at a national level to do that was like 30%.
That is to say 30% of the folks that go...
That declare a STEM major graduate with that STEM major when they're a woman,
so 70% failure rate
for women and underrepresented minorities.
Women, African American, and Latino men.
Out of 13,000 people that went through our program, we had a 96% success rate. The reason was...
So it went from a 70% fail rate to a 96% success rate.
Very simple reason. All they needed really, and was when doubt enters the mind, they had a mentor, somebody. So the way our program worked was somebody in industry, never in person. This is all over email and phone and virtual.
And does the mentor have to be, because I've been mentored by women.
Yeah, no,
I've been mentored by men of color. I continue to be, and I have done the same, and so
it had to. But to your like, that's my older self. There had to be something. So in this mentoring pair, there were criteria that were met that both needed. Like they both said, yeah, this is enough of a match. But it was relational criteria. It was like, you two were a first time college goer in your family. You two come from, a Latino background with like there had to be criteria. So it didn't necessarily mean that you had to be a woman to the woman. Is this hi?
I think my next door neighbor is coming over.
Oh, hi.
How you doing, Chief?
Oh, I'm doing good. How about you? Sorry.
Good. We're in the middle of a podcast. Can I come see you later? Oh, awesome! You come bearing gifts.
Oh, I saw that. I can see that through the.
You're a very handsome and generous man.
I could see that through the mirror reflection. I know what that was. I've got something on you.
Oh, there's nobody in the world that would be surprised about those kinds of gifts around here. So, yeah, that's cool. I get that.
So the reverse also happens. So one of the reasons why investments continue, I don't know if this is beyond speculation at this point, but what you see in kind of the venture world, right, is there's a very narrow investment sort of frame, right? It's a lot of, it's white men that we're investing in. It's white men investing in white men. It's white men from Harvard, MIT, and Stanford investing in white men from Harvard, MIT, and Stanford. It's that same sort of thing. I see my younger self in that entrepreneur, right? Like you know this, you buy on emotion, you don't buy on logic, right? And so we emotionally connect.
So here's the thing about that. I have no experience of that personally. Not in a work environment. With friends, maybe, you meet someone who grew up in your hometown and remembers the bands that you remember and all that. So there's a kinship. I get that, and I get how that could play out in a business environment, so that you get a lot of the, that circle you're talking about. But maybe it's because I grew up on the island of misfit toys or something, right? Like I got thrown out of school at 18 for being stupid. I'm dyslexic. I'm like, according to Cameron Harold, I'm bipolar, and so there was nothing about me that was going to make it anywhere past a manual labor job.
Yeah. First of all, I think you'd know if you were bipolar.
Whatever it is, like I got a lot of ups and I got a lot of downs, and as the dude said in The Big Lebowski, there's a lot of here's, there's a lot of there's a lot of strands in the old duder's head. But anyway, regardless, I was not like predestined to have the kind of life that I've had, and even before I had this kind of life, really, I was always, we were talking about this a little when we were talking about, I loved Tom Waits at 12 years old and Leonard Cohen at 12 years old. And so I couldn't wait to be an old man. Like I wanted a cane and a hat, and I wanted to talk like this. Friday left me fumbling with a, so I just,
you can still do that.
And I went to a high school for misfits because I couldn't make it anywhere else. And so I was with all the other misfits. And so my friends were everything. I mean, a pretty young age, gay, and I always had lots of Italians and lots of Jews around me, and Arabs, and like you name it. Like and so it's just not something I related to, because I guess I was always the person that I was the kind of person that could sit down with somebody and in probably less than 10 minutes find something to connect on.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that you're the norm?
I don't know. I mean, I only have my own experience. And by the way, I'm not going to sit here in front of you, Coco, and pretend to be like I'm some fucking... Listen, I'm a man. I've said and done tons of dumb shit I'm not proud of, shit I wish, I could take back, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm not by any stretch of the imagination saying I'm perfect. I will tell you that I only ever had one HR issue in my entire career.
Does that and what was that?
Well, I don't know. It had nothing to do with a female issue, so I could tell you the story if you wanted to.
Yeah, I want to hear that story.
Okay, so we sell mercury to HP for
Yeah.
$4.5 billion, making Hewlett Packard my favorite company of all time.
Yeah.
And
You were a client of ours during that time when I was running Taos, and I'm forgetting her name. Who was the
we
CIO.
Mercury.
You Mercury, yeah. Who was the CIO?
Yeah, you know, spectacular gal. Claudia.
Claudia, yes.
Fuck, why am I blanking on her name? I'm gonna kill myself.
And her husband was also CIO. Why am I?
He was the CIO at Yahoo, if I'm not.
Yeah, and then he went to.
What was her
really
last
cool
name? I'm gonna kill myself. I loved her. She was amazing.
She was amazing.
She was amazing. Yeah, killer. We
Claudia.
I want to say it was the last Mercury World. I'm almost positive it was last Mercury World. Her and I hosted it together.
And, she's super cool. Lives
I fell in love with her.
Lives down where what was that movie with the wines down in southern?
Oh, the Sideways.
Sideways. She lives down there, I think.
Yeah. By the way,
Claudia.
Sideways is a depressing, shitty movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was all the buzz about that movie? Go fuck yourself. Anyway, Claudia.
However, Mercury is being sold to HP.
So we're being sold to
HR
HP.
issue.
And so I'm on all these integration calls and all this stuff. And, you know, I worked really hard to bring the two companies together. I'll toot my own horn. Tom Hogan, who was the head of software at HP, when the companies were integrated and we had this sort of big come together meeting and stuff, he gave me this big award in front of the combined company and thanked me. And so, you know, I was working hard. I come at things with enthusiasm. Anyway, that said, one day, our head of HR, Leilani Gales, walks into my office and she says, Christopher, and you always know when the head of HR walks into your office and says, Christopher.
Yeah.
Right. And she says, do you recall? Now, the do you recall sentence is always a way bad sentence.
You're just like, oh no, was it at a party?
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh God, what do I recall? I probably don't recall at all. Anyway, she says, do you recall being on a integration call with the HP marketing team on such and such a date? And I said, no. She says, do you recall saying that we're going to tear off their heads and shit down their necks? Talking about the competition. And I said, no, I don't recall that. And she says, well, you
sounds so unlike me.
Yeah. She said, are you saying you didn't say that? I said, no, it's to your point, Coco. It sounds exactly like me. You just asked me if I recalled fucking saying that. So that was my only HR problem. But I digress.
Okay. What were we talking about?
I don't know.
Male, female differences.
Yeah. So they're real. Like, come on. Men and women are different. They are.
Yeah. I do think so.
And there's edge cases and there's unique people who are this and that. And of course. And there are men who have more female. Of course.
Yeah.
But look.
And I think, you know, and men and women are different in so many ways. I mean, I have a boy and a girl, and my son has as many female friends as male friends. He's tons of gay and bisexual and trans transgender friends. Like, he does. I mean, he's the world is his friend. My daughter has a very thin slice of friendships that are very much like her. And I don't know what that's as a result of. I'm raising them the same.
Yeah.
And then again, I have very different relationships with them. I don't know how to decode such a complicated thing.
Get your mic a little closer there, Coco.
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
There you go.
Push it away.
Yeah. Well, because we have different relationships with different people.
Yeah.
And in some cases, it's at least somewhat predicated on
their
gender, isn't it?
I think so. I mean, I don't think gender's the issue.
We do different things, right? Like, I'll give you a simple example. When you and I met today and we greeted.
Yeah.
In my mind, the woman decides how we greet.
Oh, okay.
So my preference is to give you a hug. I'm a hugger. I'm a physical guy.
Yeah.
But, you know, you and I don't really know each other that well.
I'm a hugger. So
I figured you would be. But so as we came together, it was very clear you initiated the hug.
Yeah.
And you also decided what kind of hug it was.
Yeah.
And the man.
Think about it, but yeah. Okay.
No, but as a man,
believe you.
This may sound silly, but I take a very passive stance.
Yeah.
You decide. There's some women who you greet sort of face to face, if you will. Yeah. And as you go to hug, they move and they sort of give you the shoulder.
Yeah. And you can tell.
Right. And so whatever it is, I don't give a shit what it is.
Yeah.
but I've learned over time, and I learned this. I was raised by a very powerful mother and two very powerful grandmothers. On those things, the man has to let the woman decide what the physical interaction is going to be.
However, I'm a hugger, and I've had the same experience. I've had the experience where I've hugged, I'm gonna hug the guy, and he clearly is stiff. He didn't want the hug.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so then when I'm saying goodbye, I'm like, okay, bye, like.
Yeah, I guess I never really thought about it from the female perspective.
Yeah. I think that's the thing, is you have to take the cues. Right. And guys like Harvey don't care about the cues. And then there's other guys who don't.
Yeah, but something's fucking wrong with him, right?
Well, that's true.
Because if I was doing something that you thought was inappropriate, either specific to you or in general with my behavior to women, and you told me, I could learn to behave differently.
Yeah.
That's not what fucking Harvey was up to.
No, but I think the challenge that say like George Clooney and Matt Damon have in the situation, right, where they're coming out and they're like, well, we knew he was a womanizer, but right, like is that what I think is missed when you say sort of like what are the things that the guys are missing, is what's missed is that the power dominance in the situation is one where some level of like pull the guy aside and tell him to cut it out is necessary, that he has power, that he's playing. And even in the, why am I drawing a blank on his name? 500 Startups guy. Dave McClure, right?
McClure, yeah.
Yeah. It's so his situation, right? Where he's like, well, I guess I shouldn't have asked her out for a date while she was trying to raise money, right? Like, yeah, you kind of needed to separate the two.
But like, why? Who the fuck doesn't learn that pretty early on? How can you not know that?
I think, and this is not like an in defense of men thing. I'm a pretty gray person, so just to put it out there, like I see the world pretty gray. I'm very, traditional Libra, right? Like I'm always balancing the scales. If I'm trying to give something to Dave in this situation, I'm thinking, poor judgment, right? Like he was attracted to her. He did want to ask her out at a date, but the thing wasn't, and he probably chose his words wrong. Maybe, and I'm just, I don't know anything, right? But let's just say
defend him.
No. Yes, I guess so, right? I guess so, but only out of ignorance. Like I don't know the situation. But if I was trying to defend him, right? And if this is true, this is where my gray would play. Is let's say that in his mind, he doesn't realize what she's up against, that she pitches to guys all the time who hit on her.
Which I believe would have to be true, because I don't know what it's like to be anybody else, but I don't know. I know I don't know.
Right. This is part of my point of like, guys don't know what it's like to be here, right? Like we're the underrepresented. By the way,
I do know what it's like to be the minority. I do know what it's like to be bet against. I do know what it's like to be a misfit. I do know what it's like to come to Silicon Valley and everybody give me the finger.
And maybe that's why you wouldn't behave the way he does. Like, I don't know, right?
By the way, I'm not suggesting for a second that means I have any freaking idea how it feels to be a woman in these kinds of business situations, or frankly any situations.
So I mean, I'm just.
But I can
let me just play it out.
Part of it, I guess.
So if I could play it out a little bit, like maybe he's ignorant, right, to the idea that she's been pitching to all these different investors in all sorts of different realms, and generally speaking, they don't expect her to show up in the same ways that the guy shows up, and so they're attracted to her, and they're whatever, they're sort of just playing playfully the way they might play with a guy who's already, by the nature of the fact that he's a guy, 80 times more likely to get the funding than she is. She's on guard and way more than the guy, right?
Yeah.
So she gets,
and we wouldn't feel that.
You wouldn't necessarily feel that, but for her, she's like, okay, I got them interested, right? And then she gets,
and she's like, oh fuck,
right? And then the oh fuck turns into, okay, is this conditional?
Yeah.
Then there's another oh fuck. Was I only interesting because I'm attractive?
Right. Is my business idea a dumb idea? Right.
Yeah. Like, Yeah, and that one really sucks. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of women have suffered from that. Like, okay, I got to build myself back up again because I really did have value.
Yeah.
And
But why?
so maybe so all these guys are like, now I'm afraid to have a dinner with a woman. Now I'm afraid to have a 2-hour lunch. Now I'm afraid to, be alone in a closed conference room. And like all those conversations, like that's a shame, right? Because it's just a matter more of realizing that there's not, we're not totally equal yet.
Yeah. On that one, can I just touch on that one?
Yeah.
So as all this shit plays out, on one dimension, you could argue, and I feel it a little bit. Now, of course, I'm retired, so I'm not working in a business. I think I'd probably feel a little more. That it did get a little scarier to be a guy, because for the guy that is accused of something, that didn't do something, who was being manipulated by somebody for whatever reason, holy shit, right? Because now the guilty until proven innocent is like on 11.
Yeah. Okay.
So I get that. And you know what?
Mm.
I don't give a shit. And here's my proof. You're here
Right.
at my house right now.
Right.
My wife's not here. It's you and me.
And the chickens.
And the hens, yes. Right.
Yeah.
And I could give a shit. And we don't really know each other that well. We met once through a mutual friend. So that matters, right?
Right.
And it's very clear to me, who you are in terms of what you've accomplished and achieved in life. But other than that, so the thing, there are some guys who would say, well, I took a risk. I think more women would say you took a bigger risk.
Which never occurred to me.
Never.
No.
Why?
Well, I think I'm trying to think of under what circumstance would it have felt like a risk to me. I think because I don't know. It wasn't a risk to me. It's just cool. You want to interview me? I'm going to come to your house to do it. I want to meet your chickens. No, it just never occurred to
no,
me.
you blew me away when we met. I saw your talk. I kind of wished you had more time
Yeah.
because there was a lot more I wanted to hear. And more importantly, I thought, I bet there's a great conversation to be had with this person. Right.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I guess my point is, for me personally, unless the woman gives off a very creepy vibe, which I only ever had once in my career. One time I had a one-on-one with a gal, and I could explain it if you cared, but holy shit, was it ever weird and creepy. And she worked for a gal who worked for me, and I went to her boss who worked for me, and I said, I can't ever be alone in a room with Susie again. And it wasn't Susie.
Okay.
But I guess all that said, I take the risk all day long. I hug people. I'm going to be affectionate. I'm going to be open, and I'm going to take the risk all day long. And it's never bitten me. I think people know the difference.
Right. They do. They know the difference between Matt Damon, Tom Hanks, George Clooney, and Harvey Weinstein. I think that the challenge. So maybe I shouldn't have brought him up again because he's such a bad example. I would hate to see. In fact, actually, our PR firm sent me an article that said, now the guys of Silicon Valley are sort of afraid to take meetings with women that are, and she said, what do you think of this? And I said, I think that's just a shame. I think that's completely a shame. I think most of us are good on both sides. Like most of us are not going to take advantage of a situation, and we may say things the wrong way. We may maybe there is an attractiveness and there is a desire to ask someone out. Most people will choose their timing better.
But you're not going to do that in the first meeting, you dumb asshole. Men are so retarded. We honk at women and think that's going to work. Jerry Seinfeld has a funny bit about that. Men are
dumb.
So clueless. You can't meet a woman in a business setting once, I think, and expect her to go out on a date with you. Are you fucking nuts?
Well, and I think
it needs a little bit of time. And particularly in a business setting, you need to I mean, you need a lot in a business setting, right? Because there is so much thorniness potential.
Well, I think the other thing that men need to realize is that this is a really serious time for women. We really, really, really are tired of not having an opportunity. So when we show up with a VC, we're super serious, right? When we show up for, we want that C-suite role.
We're not in Tinder mode. Is that what you're saying, Coco?
We're not in Tinder mode. Yeah, exactly. We're like, no, dude, maybe down the road, but no, right now I need your money because I'm trying to get this company started. Right? So we're very, very, very serious, and we need the community around us to take us seriously. And a huge setback is the idea that now we've scared men to the point where they who control the money won't meet with us. Like, that's a real shame. Right?
Yeah, well, fuck them.
Not to say that, no, fuck them in the sense that, not to say that these women shouldn't have come out and said everything that
no, of course.
should.
But there is, I remember when I got my ear pierced, Coco.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how old I was, but 14 or 15, whatever I was. And my mother was mad. And she said to me, well, Christopher, if when you grow up and you're interviewing for a job and you got this earring in, they may not hire you because of the earring.
Uh-huh. You said, I don't care. And
my response was, well, then fuck them. And so, and we had, I beg you to listen to The Legends and Losers with Shaku Atre.
Okay.
She's a Indian woman.
Okay.
And and she's in her 60s or 70s, I'm not sure. And I've known her for almost 30 years. And she's a complete rock star. I mean, you can't be a bigger rock star than Shaku. And her whole life story is, I was the first and only girl or woman to X, including sending the CEO of IBM in the 70s a letter and essentially forcing IBM to hire her. And there she is in Manhattan in the 70s, wearing her sari, going to work, doing database architecture at IBM. I mean, she is a result production machine. And so her attitude towards these obstacles was always, oh yeah, let me show you. And so I'm not advocating for unfair obstacles in any way, shape, or form. So to quote Archie Bunker, don't misconstrue what I'm saying. But there is a flip side, which is, where are the fighters too, right? Like, go fight for it. I fought for everything in my career.
Okay, but so this is sort of the reverse meritocracy issue.
Okay.
It's like women have to work harder.
No, I'm not suggesting that at all.
Yeah.
You know I'm not saying that.
No, I know you're not saying that. It's just that so for me, I ran a company. Yes, I was the president and COO, but everything in the company reported to me, and I reported to the CEO. So, it's called running the company. It's called running the company. I ran the company. I ran a tech company. So I'm one of the rare women and it was successful.
No, and you did the kinds of you had to have done the kinds of things Shaku did.
Exactly, and so there's a lot of tenacity and fight and clearly beating in the game of meritocracy. But the problem is that if there are as many women as there are men, and yet they're not advancing, there's something in that formula that's wrong, right? Some of it is, and so even if we give equal weight to women opt out and men have unconscious bias, even if we give equal weight to those things, the women.
What does that mean?
That women aren't advancing, aren't being promoted.
I get that
part. Because men have unconscious biases against them that don't get them promoted.
Yeah.
And maybe that happens 50% of the time. Let's just say, I'm just for argument's sake.
Okay.
And the other 50% of the time, the women opt out. They either
meaning they don't want.
They didn't raise their hand. They drop out to have kids and then don't come back. Whatever it is, right? Let's just say that 50% of the time that's what happens. Either way, it can't possibly be a meritocracy issue. It can't be that like women meet their Peter Prince sooner than men.
I absolutely get that. No, no,
Yeah.
no, no, no. I do. So I'm not having that
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
The conversation I'm having is, let's stoke the fight
Yeah.
on multiple dimensions. One is, hey, fucking A, wake up and make some changes. At the system level,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the
From the
other
top.
is, hey,
Yeah.
let's be fucking warriors.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I'm
Oh,
trying to
yeah,
say.
yeah. The fucking warriors, I think, is happening.
Right?
And
Because I had to be a fucking warrior
yeah.
to make
Yeah.
any of it work.
But the challenge is, okay, so let's go back to the suffrage movement. I love this podcast. Have you ever heard the podcast, One Vote? It's one of the Radio Labs.
No.
Okay, so Radio Lab with Eppin Rom, you know the guys, Rod Eppin, whatever. Okay.
I don't.
You don't know Radio Lab? Oh, it's awesome.
No, I'm
okay.
lost.
You're lost. Okay, so
Which I often am, clearly.
there's a Radio Lab called One Vote, and so to the extent that I get any of my facts wrong, they're there. Okay, so
we can look this shit up later.
We can look this shit up later, but yeah. So so in the suffrage movement, right? You had the warriors, the women who were the
you
warriors.
had to have had them.
It
wouldn't have gone, right?
You absolutely had the warriors, but the story is that, and I forget all the players' names, but at the time that the suffrage movement actually had success, and there was women were given the right to vote in 1919, and then it was ratified by the states in 1920. So the ratification by the states, it required some number of states to agree, right? So they're the representatives in each of those states had to come together and say, yes, we agree, right? Which were 100% men, right? Because women didn't have the right to vote.
The state senates.
Yes.
Yeah.
And all men, right? So here we are in a situation where you've got women warriors, but they have no ability
at the system level
to vote, right?
Yeah.
I would argue that even if you have women warriors in this circumstance in today's day and age, we still don't have the system level vote, because 87%
I'm not arguing with
vote,
you about that
yeah.
in any way, shape, or form. I'm saying both have to happen.
Both have to happen.
But because I'm a fighter, and so I don't like that you don't hear. I want to hear more about the fight.
Yeah,
I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay, you want to hear more about the fight?
Because I've always been surrounded by so many incredibly successful women. I mean, my mother is an ass kicker.
Most mothers are.
Well, yeah, of course. That's no, really, really, mothers are incredible, and
mothers are amazing.
My mother is, fuck.
My mom was one of the first women who got to live off the dorm or off campus at Penn. She was one of the first 3 women to get a Thuron scholarship to go study abroad at Oxford University. And she raised us
What did she study?
She studied psychology and nursing. Yeah, nursing at that point.
Yeah.
And then later psychology. But okay, so my fight, I believe that the best fight I have is to tell the positive stories and to get the men listening to the men. So
what is get the men listening to the men,
or get the men speaking because men listen to men, right? So here's a story, right? These are the stories I like to tell over and over and over and over again. So I hosted an event, Athena Alliance hosted an event with Joanne Lublin. She's the management editor of the Wall Street Journal. She's one of the people who controls the front page of the Wall Street Journal. And
other than that, she doesn't have a big job.
She doesn't have a big job. And she wrote a book called Earning It. And I hosted an event for her where I did a fireside chat with her. And then I had her speak to 4 female CEOs. And to this event, we invite our network of 800 plus people. Granted, more than half of that is women right now, but 300-400 people of that are men. They're male VCs, they're male CEOs, they're male directors on boards. Our network is
the
just
ecosystem.
that top tier ecosystem, right? So out of the 110 or so people who show up for this event, I got 7 guys. The CEO of Delphix, the CEO of Pantheon, the CEO of Equilar, they're all CEOs. They're all great guys. 7 guys show up.
Oh, You had 100 and something guys registered and only 7 came. Is that, or did I
No,
lose
no,
you
no,
in the
no.
math there?
110 people come.
Oh, to the whole event. Okay, got it.
Yeah. And
But
7 of them
7
are
guys.
guys, right? And the next day I get this email from Zach, who's the CEO of Pantheon. And he says, Coco, that was hands down the best event I've been to all year. And I said, Zach, why? That's amazing. And he said, because I met all these incredible contacts. I met 2 potential buyers. I met a couple of advisors. I met a couple CEO peers that were just amazing. 1 guy, 1 woman, and he said, and the quality of the people in that room, all these 100, every single woman I met was a rare talent. Those are his words. Every single woman I met was a rare talent. And I said, Zach, I invite increasingly to these events just as many men as women. And as you can see, they don't show up. Why don't they show up? And he said, honestly, I don't know, but I think it's because they don't think that these are for them. They think they're for women. They think it's not for them. And so they're wrong, ! And he said, men have to understand that we get incredible value out of this, right? Out of being a part of this half the sky that we don't know, right? Seriously, we know them as mothers and daughters and wives and, friends' wives and whatever, but we don't know them as executive peers.
Well, not that I'm perfect, because I'm fucking way far from perfect, but I sure know them as executive peers.
Yeah, but you're rare then.
I've worked for women.
You're Zach, right?
And,
you're Zach Rosen. You would come to that event.
Listen, the single most effective executive, the single most self-actualized executive I've ever met, ever seen, ever heard of is named Sue Barsamian. And we were together at Mercury, and Sue is a wrecking ball of results. And today, you may know, I'm sure you've seen it, HP Software got spun out and now it's Micro Focus, right? Mm-hmm. Sue Barsamian now, she had a ton of, so she stayed after we worked together at Mercury. She stayed after the integration. She went on to do a ton of giant shit at HP. She ran giant business units, all kinds of stuff. Today, she's the chief sales and marketing officer of Micro Focus. And she's the single most effective executive I've ever seen. And when new people used to come on board, Coco, I go, oh, fuck. She would put them through this 6-week thing. And I named it the Sue Olympics. And the reason I named it the Sue Olympics was she made them compete in every sport to see if they could take it. And if they made it out of the Sue Olympics, then they got to keep their job.
That's good.
And so all that is to say, I learned more about sort of how to be effective, how to get shit done from Sue than anybody.
Yeah, I keep hearing that story about Pat Howes at Siebel. I hear those stories all the time.
What Bruce says about her, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't there, but
I wasn't either. But I hear those stories. I hear stories. Ori Sasan, he invested in Diane Green, and he invested in
oh my god,
Ari Tatarko.
I wish I had invested in Diane Green.
And I do hear stories over and over and over again from guys about how great their investments in women, the women that they've worked with as peers or as bosses, and so it's kind of like who hates any French person that they've met and really had a relationship with, but for some reason we have this negative image of France, right?
So
it's like you can't, on an individual level. Yes, most of us are connected in the right ways.
We had the legendary entrepreneur Jeff Hoffman on, and he was quoting Mark Twain, and I'm gonna get the quote wrong, so I'll just try to paraphrase, but it was sort of something to the effect of, travel kills ignorance, right? Mm-hmm. And bigotry and so forth. And I remember when that shit was going down in Charlottesville, and I was screaming and crying at the TV at the same time. Like, it's 2017.
Yeah.
We got some fucking work to do here, people. And this is the dumbass. Like, are you fucking mental? Like, what are you even talking about? It was so fucking stunning.
I was I was born in Malaysia, but I was raised in Oxford, Pennsylvania. And Oxford, Pennsylvania is Amish country, and it's surrounded by dairy farms. And just 10 minutes from my house is Rising Sun. And Rising Sun it used to be one of the, sort of holding spots of the KKK. So we're driving through Rising Sun on the way to the airport. And I say to the kids, this used to be one of the holding spots of the KKK. Just a little, local lore or history. And I said, I'm
your
just,
whiskey or your water?
oh, this is my water.
Okay.
So I, just for kicks and giggles, I decide to do a little Google search and see what's going on with the KKK and Rising Sun. And turns out they had just had, in that year, they had just had a big KKK meeting in Rising Sun. And this article was going on about how they were trying to change the image of the organization, and they're not a hate organization any longer, and they'd like people to understand this. So I was like, why don't you just
look? I don't give a fuck, right? There's a couple people in the world who think I know a thing or two about marketing, right? Yeah. There is no repositioning or category design that's fucking possible. Give it up.
Right, drop it. But anyway, so
but of course, the point is the obvious point, which is I remember seeing them on TV chanting about Jews, and I thought,
how can this be?
Have you ever met one?
Yeah.
And by the way, if you ate a potato latke, you'd probably.
Well, and they might say, I have met one, and I like my neighbor. He's okay. Who's Jewish? He's all right. But on the whole, and I think that's sort of what happens.
But
right?
Like, here we are. We're back in the 70s at Archie Bunker. It's like, what the fuck's going on?
Yeah.
What happened? What happened?
I think some of what happened, and this is complete, like, I don't know, maybe this is like a 5% thought. But when I think about sort of the 60s, right? Bra burning, women's lib, independence, I don't need you guys, all of that, right? And there was this sort of uproar of feminism and freedom, and it was very liberating. And those women are the mothers, right, of my generation. I'm 47, just as of last Friday. And
I wasn't going to ask, but happy birthday. My
you.
father, Bruce, says women only have two ages, under 21 and over 21, and men should just stay out of anything other than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I got you beat by a couple of years. I'm 49, so.
Oh, good. Okay. So that will
you
always
look
be
way
true.
better than I do.
So anyway, I don't know how to respond to that. I actually, by the way, I think bald looks really good on guys. More guys should do that.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Bald is, or hair on a lot of men is dumb, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
And then the guys, it's thinning, and they like sort of are.
And then they keep holding on to it, and it's like, no, just bald it. It's okay. Right? It's good. Anyway, so where was I? Okay. So they're the mothers of my generation, right? So I think what happened to some extent, maybe, and this is just my guess, is that those powerful, strong mothers, my mom, who's the first this and the first that, and she paved the way, right, in a way that made my generation sort of feel like the job was done and that was going to be okay for us, right? So we sort of went into our work world. I went in, in 1992 was when I entered the workforce. I didn't think about it. I didn't think about whether I was going to get an equal shot, or, whether or not I could make a career, or I didn't really think about it. I thought the way had been paved.
And so you were just going for, you didn't expect obstacles.
I didn't. And I think, there was, if we think about the 90s and even the 2000s, there was a big lull. I don't remember hearing a lot about women's challenges, except in sort of acute places. Like in the 2000s, it started to come up like, wait a minute, we had more women engineers in the 80s than we have now. And that was because all the computers were marketed to the boys. And so the girls didn't, so there was sort of this thing around STEM, around engineering and women, but broadly around women and women in the workplace. I think for a lot of us women, there was an aha sort of moment. It's been the last couple of years where we've been surprised to understand, wait a minute, you mean that there's only 13% of partners in law firms are women, and only 13% of the, the partners in this and that and all the, regardless of the field, that women are way, way, way behind. I think that's like we're having a second coming, it's like, and I think some of us in our 20s didn't want, we thought the way had been paved for us, but also I've never considered myself a feminist. I actually have kind of a little bit of a negative view on feminism, honestly. Like I like being a woman.
I don't even know what a feminist is, all these
I don't
labels.
either. I said that to a guy friend of mine, and he said, "You are absolutely a feminist, Coco." And I was like, okay, I don't know what that is any longer, but I had some sort of image that was more about like, I don't need a guy. And I like having the door held open for me.
Yeah. So let me push on that. So I like holding the door open for you.
Yeah. Cool. That's great.
So we're good.
We're good.
But now when we're in the boardroom,
you can still hold the door open, but you can pull the seat open for me if you want.
In the boardroom.
Yeah.
And there's
cool
no
with that,
part of you that
me.
says that makes some dynamic or I don't fucking know what.
No, for me, no. What would bother me is if I'm kept out of the boardroom.
Yeah.
If I don't actually have an equal shot to get in it.
Because fucking A, my mother taught me, God bless her, to be a gentleman. I don't live up to it as much as I should, but I'm taking a run at it. And so the hold the door open and that kind of stuff. Look, but I try to be a gentleman.
Yeah.
And I remember years ago being at a business dinner, a group of guys, one gal, and then a day or two afterwards, the gal shared with us that it got a little spooky in the parking lot when she went to go get her car, because I don't know, it was 9 or maybe 10, I don't know what it was, in downtown San Francisco. And so I thought, oh, okay. So from that point forward, whenever I was at a business dinner with a woman who was not traveling with somebody else, I would say to them, if it's okay with you, I'd like you to walk you to your car. And the interesting thing about that is they always said yes, and they always understood exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And I think in this environment today, how many men would do, or actually, I would, ask the question, I would like to, could I? I know this is downtown Palo Alto, but shit goes down.
Yeah. So here's the thing is I don't want to wordsmith, because then that also kind of is, now I've got to think about everything that I say and how I say it. So my immediate, I sort of went to, if you saw anything in my eyes, it was like, I went to wanting to wordsmith the way you said it.
Yeah,
like,
you were going to fix me.
Screw it. No.
And then I tried to fix me.
Yeah, don't do it.
So what did I say wrong?
Would you like me to walk you to your car, as opposed to I would like to? Like, I mean, but
okay.
that's such a stupid, subtle difference, right? Like, if the intent is there, which it is.
See, because I think, look, and maybe those are better words. I think context is kind of everything.
Yeah. So your language is more protective, right? Your language is like, I would like you're sort of taking control of the situation. The other way of doing it, would you like, puts her completely in control of the situation and has her in the position of saying, no, I'm cool.
Okay. I got that.
Do you see what I'm saying? So, but again, like I would, if to the extent that guys have to, now they're having to have like a narrator in their head,
well, we're
like
worried,
that kind of
right?
sucks, right?
Yeah. We're worried.
Yeah. And I don't think you
because
need
to quote Archie Bunker, now everything can be misconstrued, right?
Yeah. Well, okay. So I was at a dinner a week and a half ago, and the host of the dinner was like left and right saying the wrong thing. Like, I mean, and just sort of cracking jokes. We were talking about, like literally, we were talking about sort of AI and, whether at some point it would be okay that our machines were sort of completely picking out and delivering all of our groceries for us. And there came this thing about like, well, but there's still this experience that you want to have where, you feel the peaches and are the peaches. And the guy took he took it and he was like, I got the peaches thing, right? Like, and so he went with it. All right.
I'm not even getting it.
So he turns it into this little like, ha ha, she's squeezing the peaches. Like, I mean, because peaches are sort of a term used sometimes for women's breasts, right? So he kind of went into this joke land that wasn't funny.
Wow, listen, I have a horrible mind, but I didn't even make that connection.
Well, who's the band? Anyway.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, right. So, but my point is, the guy was just being dumb. Like,
But consistently.
2 or 3 times, right? But and as I was sitting there thinking about the scenario, and I was thinking about, like, there are definitely probably a majority of women who would have felt really uncomfortable and really annoyed by that situation, and a few who would have felt like very internally uncomfortable, right? For me, it was like, dumbass. Like,
yeah.
Why'd you say that? Like,
yeah.
You look dumb, dude. You know what I mean? Like, and so I think there is, I think there is a level of checking it that guys should be doing right now. Like, there is a level of sort of like internal reflection, how should I behave better? But a broad fear and a broad worry about the things that I think are good, like, you want to open a door for me? Cool. Maybe test the first time if I'm like, hey, thanks. If I sort of give the indication that, hey, I got it, then, you know what I mean? Like, I think we have to figure it out together, but I don't think that there should be a backlash or a sort of swinging and shying away from the behaviors that are generally nice in context between men and women.
Amen. Hallelujah, sister. Yeah. And that's how I choose to conduct myself. And I'm somebody who takes a lot of risk with things I say and the way I behave. And the risk reward, I'm a 49-year-old man. The risk reward, I mean, the reward is huge and the risk is really minimal because, we had, do you happen to know Professor Tina Selig from Stanford?
No, is she related to, who's the other Selig? Is she psychology?
So her PhD is in neuroscience.
Oh, cool.
And
no, I don't know her.
So, and she's written a zillion books. I think 17's the number, 6 in my head, but whatever it is, it's many. And she's spent a lot of time recently on creativity, and she's had a lot to do with entrepreneurship. And anyway, she's an extraordinary human being. And we had her on recently because her new book, Creativity Rules, came out. And she introduced me to a term.
Let's tuck that away.
Your phone's getting very excited. She introduced me to a term I'd never heard and I now love and I'm going to use forever. And the term was, she said, before you brainstorm, framestorm. And I think she's really right. The framing of things, the context of things, right? If a comedian gets up on stage and says, "Good evening, motherfuckers,"
yeah,
but people are going to laugh.
Yeah,
and if Jeannie Romanetti, the CEO of IBM, started off the earnings call with "Good afternoon, motherfuckers," it would be front page news in the Wall Street Journal for all the wrong reasons, right? And so the frame or the context is everything. And I've just chosen to conduct myself in that, as outrageous as I can be and as mistakes as I can make, that people understand contextually where you're coming from or where I'm coming from.
Yeah. And I think that's at the heart of it is like, I think it's the framing, but I also think that most of us have the opportunity to, even if we screw up, to have a do-over, right? Like it's more about recognizing, it's more about how you adjust and respond, and so kind of going, oh, that really came out the wrong way, or I really did the wrong thing, or gosh, it wasn't the right time to ask you out on a date, by the way, let's just get back to if we can try to.
And do you think guys can recover, and women would let them recover from even that stuff?
I think depending on what happened. I mean, I think I think that to the extent that a message of clear dismissal is sent, where it's like, no, I'm not interested in investing in you, but I really want to date you. Where like I think what would have to happen in order to recover from that is to go back to the core issue and say, you know what, I did the wrong thing over here, trying to turn this into something that I was interested in, and totally dismissing and being um, insensitive to the thing that you really, really need and are serious about. And so let's come back to the investment conversation you needed to have. Here's why I'm not investing in your company, and maybe even go further and say, but here are the things that would make your company investable. Here are the things that I would want to, I want to introduce you to other people. Like, I think you can recover. I think it's a matter of how you recover.
Yeah. So here's what I think I hear you saying as I try to take my first pass at processing our dialogue today.
Mm-hmm.
What if we just treat each other like human beings?
Yeah.
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 When we do good and bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we do good and bad. I think there's patterns of behavior and long-term patterns of behavior that maybe say, hey, look, you need a bigger time out. Let's get you out of the picture for a while so we can rebuild this company or whatever it is, right? Like, there are things that are harder to overcome and to come back from. And those are usually based on patterns and longevity and sort of systemic and built in. But when we make individual mistakes
but yeah, those are the egregious cases, right?
Right. But
and that's a bigger problem than I think what we're talking about, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't, because.
But when we're talking about just sort of, normal, I mean,
because if you're talking about Harvey Weinstein, that's not like, hey, Harvey, behave better.
Yeah, that's the bigger timeout. That's
right. That's
hey,
like a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. You need a really big timeout.
But the more sort of
more.
we bumper card into each other the wrong way here, and maybe I was an insensitive idiot or whatever, but
yeah. I mean, I have a friend who,
and by the way, women do it to men.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
they do.
Yeah,
that's true.
I mean, it's happened to me more than once.
Right. The difference is, and so this is sort of like trying to, separate the issues, right? Like the difference is we're still not equal. Right. So,
yeah, I get that. I mean, I'm not stupid.
Yeah. So I know you're not stupid. But what I mean is that, yes, and it's not acceptable.
But not stupid.
Yes, and it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable for either of us to behave badly toward each other, right? It's just not acceptable. The challenge in the context of business, though, is that we don't have the equal opportunity to change the dynamic, to change the way things work.
The other thing I wonder is, I may get myself in trouble on this, but I think as a man, you have to put women in a place in your head. That's the only way I can think about it, right? So if you're a single man, there are going to be women that you'll date, and then that if you have sisters, then you understand what sisters are, and then you have work colleagues, and you understand what, and you sort of got to get them in those buckets and fucking leave them there, And so, for example, the wives of my buddies, well, they're my sisters. That's where they are.
Yeah.
Right. And amazing women like Sue Barsamian, Carol Gum, and so many incredible women that I've worked with, Janet Matsuda and Jennifer Johnson, these like incredible, inspiring women who've taught me so much, right? Well, they're in the colleague bucket. And on top of that, I'm fucking married. So all of that doesn't even matter, right? Because to quote Ron White in one of the funniest lines about this, he says, the comedian Ron White,
no, but I guess I should. I should know more comedians. It'd be better to laugh
the best part about making love to your wife? You can't get caught. Anyway, but I digress. And so the point is, like, fucking A, don't think of them that way.
Yeah.
You know, like your buddy's wife is your buddy's wife, and so she's your sister.
I do think that women would, maybe that is one of the key messages that women are trying to send from the into the investor world, into the sort of leadership realms, into wherever. It's, please take us seriously. We really, really want that job. We really, really want to be invested in. We don't want to be, we want to be seen with the lens that you see your male peers first and foremost. And so, yes, we're, you know, the opposite sex, and that has a place somewhere else. But here, when we're together in this business context, in this context where, you know, it matters differently, we want to be seen as our competencies, our experiences, our ideas, so yeah, to the extent you have to shut a filter or create a filter for that, do it, because that's what the women want.
Well, and the interesting thing, Tony Chan, who I mentioned earlier in our dialogue, who wrote Good People, he really clarified something for me that kind of gave me some completion. He talked about the importance of having affection for the people that you work with, and he used that word specifically, right? And so I think that's a powerful way to think about it, right? Because she's gonna probably kill me, but I remember years ago, Sue told me this story. When her daughters were young, they saw an email from me to her on her laptop, and at the end of the email, I signed it XOXO. And I can't remember how old the girls were, but, you know, I don't know, 8, 6 or whatever. You know, and Sue's married to a spectacular guy, and you know, I love Bill and all that, right? Anyway, so her daughters are like, "Mom, you know, who's this person sending you emails with XOXO in them?" And she said, "Oh, you know, that's just Christopher. That's just, you know, the relationship that we have, right?" And so it's like, okay to have that.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, it's very powerful to have that.
Yeah, I think, and that comes in different forms. So I met a guy named Louis Lamb in 20 years ago or something like that, 1997.
When you were 4.
When I was 4. And he was one of our consultants, and he worked for me, and he worked for me, for our company, in a variety of capacities, where I kept, you know, moving up the ranks, and eventually we were not, you know, directly managing each other or in a management relationship any longer. But we had developed a very strong relationship, and so for 10 of the 20 years that we've known each other, he was working for me, and the other 10 years he's just been my buddy. And at this point, you know, a number of 5 years ago or something, he pulled me aside and he said, "Coco, you're everything in my will is going to you." I was like, "Oh my God," that's a big, you know. And then he met the woman of his dreams and married her. And you know, "Coco, you have to be in the delivery room for me. I need you there." I'm like, "Okay, as long as it's all right with Megan, I'm cool." It's good.
Wow.
And now when people meet him, he tells them, "This is my sister," and he's from Hong Kong. He's Chinese, and so they're all, "How's that work?" But you know, and what's funny about it is I always explained it. You know, I say, "This is my brother," but we're not really brother and sister. We're sort of like brother and sister from another. You know, like I'm
brother from another mother.
Brother from another mother, and he doesn't even explain it. He's like, "This is my sister."
Right.
Right, and it's just that's that. And to that point of affection, right? We developed an affection for each other that has turned into true intentional family. I mean, he lives down the street from me.
No, you know, one of my favorite quotes of all time is Richard Bach: "Rarely do people of the same family grow up under the same roof."
Yes.
Right. And look, the family you grow up with, I mean, and I find the older I get, the more in love I am with my blood family, so to speak.
Yeah.
And when you kind of construct a legendary tribe.
Yeah. And
a legendary tribe at work.
Yeah.
You know, so I mentioned this gal, Janet Matsuda, who's now she's the head of, I think, product marketing at Palo Alto. and she's been on Legends and Losers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm head over heels in love with her.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I remember meeting her kids when they were little squeakers. Right.
Uh-huh.
And now, like, I get to quote unquote mentor her kids. Right.
Yeah.
Like, and, you know, in her last job, she was a CMO and she had an incredibly, you know, and
Yeah.
I couldn't have been like, and so,
Yeah. So that, so,
but
so,
I don't, but that's exactly the same. By the way, it's exactly the same way I feel about guys. And I'm as affectionate with the fucking guys as I am with the girls. No, seriously.
Well, me too. I hug women. I'm a hugger. Yeah, no, I think that so what we're saying though is in the context when you're building and it's serious and there isn't there affection builds over time and deep close personal relationships happen over time regardless of male, female, whatever, right? And they should, and it's good, and it's good for business. It's not bad for business to have that, and to be able to finish each other's sentences and all of that, right? Early on, when it's about a transaction, when it's about getting the money, getting the partnership, getting the deal closed, getting the promotion, when it's about those things, it has to be about the business. It has to be about that transaction, so that
That's a great way of putting it.
so that women really,
Yeah.
have a fair share. And we can't fully take our blinders off, but we have to be aware of our blinders and then put them aside, like unconscious biases. If our sort of
Yeah.
internal voice is saying, well, can she do this? Because look at her, she's pregnant, she's asking for money, and to start her company, can she do it? Like, set it aside.
Remember that old axiom, if you want something done, give it to a busy person?
Yeah, that's true, actually.
I've seen pregnant women do things in business that to this day blow my mind.
Yeah, and when I have nothing to do, I get lazier. It's actually kind of depressing. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah.
All right. Well, Coco, anything else before we kick out of this wave?
Well, if I have time for just a tiny commercial.
You do.
We have our fundraiser coming up on December 7th.
Wow.
Yeah. So Jeffrey Moore will be speaking at it, as will
the legendary Jeffrey Moore.
The legendary Jeffrey Moore. It's not unfair to say that, like, if you are pursuing an MBA anywhere in the world, Jeffrey Moore, right? I mean, like, that's true.
Look, I don't know. I got thrown out of high school, so I have no idea what they do at MBA school. But if they don't, it's a shame. It's a shame because and of course he's written other great books, but Crossing the Chasm.
Yeah, it's awesome.
If you don't read Crossing the Chasm, you should read Crossing the Chasm.
Cross the chasm.
You'll never cross the chasm.
Anyway, so Jeffrey Moore is speaking. So is Maria Cloway, who is on the board of Microsoft. She's the president of Harvey Mudd College. We have this awesome 9-year-old girl who's going to be on stage with me. I cheekily said to her, and maybe this isn't appropriate, I don't know, I said, please don't take this the wrong way, but it's like we're asking to save the oceans, and you're kind of the dolphin. So this yeah.
Hey, be a good dolphin.
Be a good dolphin. No, she's an amazing woman who, young lady, she's 9. She started a company called Coder Bunnies.
A 9-year-old started a...
Yeah, and it's a board game to teach kids how to code. She's spoken in front of 400 people audiences at Intel, and I mean, she's amazing, young lady. But our theme is save a seat for your daughter, because at the pace that we're going, 1% per year in getting women into the boardroom, it'll be 50 years or more before there's parity in the boardroom between men and women. So anyway, so she'll be there. We have John Chambers has agreed to have coaching sessions with him auctioned off.
Wow.
So so my plug is, please come and bring your wallet. Right. Says we're doing good stuff, and we need to be supported in the world. And
and we'll make sure your your website and contact info and all that's in the show notes.
Yeah. Awesome. And then wish me good luck in these next couple of weeks.
You're traveling a lot.
We're launching in Seattle. We're launching in Boston, and we have 80 or 90 people coming to each of those events.
Wow.
It's super cool.
You're turning into quite the rock star, aren't you, Coco?
Well, I've been the rock star.
Are you still allowed to say "atta girl"? Can I say that, or is
Atta girl. Yeah. I mean, I'm cool with it. That's good. I like it.
Well, Coco, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You are so awesome. This has been a great conversation.
I could keep going. We could.
Well, you're incredibly engaging, incredibly smart, and you're on an unbelievable mission. And it's very, very cool and very brave. And you have an awesome point of view. And
I'm having a lot of fun. And there's been a lot of great guys that are in the mission with us. So, actually, our video on our website, the first video is 4 guys talking. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, guys are allowed around every once in a while then.
We welcome. In fact, if they're not around, we're unhappy.
Well, excellent. We're unhappy when you're not around.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, Coco,
thank you
you're
so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for coming to Santa Cruz to do this in person with me. It's really, really wonderful of you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wowie wee wow. There it is. Coco Brown. So glad you could join us for that dialogue. And if there's somebody in your life, if there's 20 people in your life who you believe will love this dialogue with Coco as much as I did, why not go ahead and share Coco with them right now? And we'd also love it if you checked us out at legendsandlosers.com. We have a brand new website there and a breakthrough set of functionality around finding episodes that might interest you or your loved ones. We would like to thank HarperCollins, Instant Classic Play Bigger, How Pirates, Dreamers, and Innovators Create and Dominate Markets. Equity Directory, connecting startups to the talent and resources they need to build a legendary business. NetSuite, #1 in cloud ERP at netsuite.com. Wildcat Ventures, a legendary venture capital firm here in Silicon Valley. OneLifeFullyLived.org. Dream, plan, and live your best life. The incredible new book by our friend and multi-time guest, Dushka Zapata, Your Seat Cushion is a Flotation Device. Check it out and get your copy today wherever you buy books. Verve Coffee Roasters, the official coffee of Legends and Losers in Santa Cruz, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Tokyo, and always at vervecoffee.com. PursuingResults.com, the producers of legendary podcasts, and this one too, Interview Valet, podcast interview marketing. Get yourself on some podcasts and get some business done at interviewvalet.com. The extraordinary podcast, Achieve Your Goals, with our friends and both guests on Legends and Losers, Hal Elrod and John Berghoff. Bell Destination Events, for your Hawaii wedding dreams come true. You can make those dreams come true at belldestinationevents.com. And the World Wildlife Fund, because our planet and wildlife matter. Now, we have to remind you that this oddcast is the sole property of the Legends and Losers Oddcast Network, and we would love it. We would implore you. We would get on our hands and knees to beg you to share the shit out of it. All rights do remain disturbed. In the event of a water landing, Legends and Losers can also be used as a flotation device. We must warn you that Legends and Losers may contain forward-looking statements, backward-looking statements, and completely idiotic-looking statements. And all results may differ materially in the future. Listen to Lincoln Park, support diversity, teach girls entrepreneurship. Hey, don't be lame. Get out of the passing lane. Thank you, Candy Dandy. I love you, Mom and Dad. And hey, Colin, this oddcast really ties the room together, doesn't it? Today, our deepest apologies go out to Harvey Weinstein, founder of the Weinstein Company. Sorry, Harvey, we just ran out of time for you. That's it. We're out of here. Be legendary, my friends, and we hope to see you again soon on another episode of Legends and Losers.